pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger roll with planet. Body topside speed off.
Yikes. You bet. Okay. We don't need any more of these.
All right, folks. Good morning, space fans. If you're standing by for a launch today, let's hope that the weather holds. Coming at you live from Cape Canaveral, the NASA spaceflight team is here standing by for this launch of NROL-108 on SpaceX. Let me know if you can hear me and see our video feed. John Galloway with NASA Spaceflight here. We've got the video feed courtesy of Chris Gebhardt, who is out there at Cape Canaveral at the press site. With a big question mark on the end of it. That is where Chris set up today, right?
Yes, it is, DOS.
Okay, good.
Kennedy Space Center press site, yes.
All right. So Chris has rolled out to the Kennedy Space Center press site, and I will let everybody know off the very beginning here, it is quite windy. So whenever Chris hops on comms, there is going to be some wind noise. Again, we're working on that, but it takes time to ship things around, especially around the holidays. Thanks to y'all's support, we do have some solutions for that, but they are not quite in place yet. So please bear with us on the wind noise on Chris's mic today. I'm actually testing some of the gear on my own head right now to make sure that it all sets up and know that I can support Chris when he gets it out to the field. So we are working
from
on
your
that.
head to mine. That's how we do it, right?
There you go. There you go. So let's introduce Chris real quick. Chris Gebhardt, Assistant Managing Editor for NASA Spaceflight out in the field. How you doing, Chris?
I am doing just fine for someone who's already been up for close to 4.5 hours because this is actually the second launch of the day, not the first. So it's already been a day. Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you, DOS?
What else launched this morning?
Yeah, so at 5:11 a.m. Eastern Time, the Indian Space Research Organization launched the CMS-01 communication satellite into geostationary transfer orbit. It launched from the Satish Dhawan Space Center on the eastern coast of India and had a very successful climb to orbit, and it'll spend the next few weeks raising its orbit up to true geostationary orbit, 35,786 kilometers from Earth, and then it'll take a position over the Indian Ocean and replace the GSAT-12 communication satellite, which has been up there for 9 years with an expected 7-year lifetime. So, yeah, good stuff happened in India, and now halfway around the world, we're waiting to see if the Falcon 9 can send a secret it doesn't know it's up there payload for the NRO up into space today.
Good deal. Let's get Thomas introduced here real quick, and then I'm going to circle back and ask you about the weather because it looks a little tough. The rocket is actually
Don't it?
in some fog there, but let's get Thomas on. Thomas Berghardt with NASA Spaceflight as well. Thomas, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, and just like Chris, hoping that the weather cooperates for a highly secretive classified payload launch for the NRO on a flight-proven Falcon 9 today.
All right. And then also back in the studio, Michael Baylor running graphics and code and fleet cam this morning. Michael Baylor, check in on comms.
How's it going, everyone? I think weather, we're about to talk about it, but I think it was supposed to be pretty good, but not looking as promising as the forecast right now.
All right. Well, y'all take it away and tell us what's going on with the weather here because it does look a little gloomy out there.
Doesn't it? Yeah, so this is one where I need to start by saying this looks far worse than it actually is. So the Falcon 9s do not have to worry about low cloud ceilings, which we have today. In fact, a layer of fog has just barely risen above the vehicle assembly building. When I drove in about half an hour ago, you couldn't see the top quarter of the vehicle assembly building. It was in the clouds. But this is not necessarily a constraint for the Falcon 9. They have launched with much cloudier and overcast conditions than what you see right now. In fact, the very first Falcon 9 to leave from pad 39A on a cargo resupply mission to the space station a couple of years ago, basically the fog layer was just barely above the lightning mast on 39A, and Falcon 9 went up just fine in a single second launch window. So what we're watching for today are some winds and some embedded rain showers that were in the area. We overall have a 70% chance of acceptable launch weather conditions within the 3-hour window. They've already pushed 45 minutes into that. So we're already targeting a liftoff at 9:45 Eastern, 14:45 UTC. Again, 45 minutes into the 3-hour launch window, and that was for weather. But again, it's not that bad. While one of the safety things, or one of the safety rules here at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral Space. Ooh, I got it wrong.
That was like the first time
No!
ever you messed that
Darn
up.
it! I was wondering when that deeply ingrained error would
Right.
No, one of the rules is that we have to have visual tracking of the vehicle through a certain point in the ascent, but that visual flight rule can be met by downrange tracking assets. So the cameras that we have stationed further up and downrange, as well as any airborne assets, can meet the visual on the vehicle through a certain altitude, basically. So, like I said, it looks far worse than it is. That doesn't mean we'll get the 30% chance that we need to get off the ground today. It just means don't look at the clouds and go, oh my gosh, it's never going to happen, and go away. Because this is Falcon 9. Things can change quickly with the weather.
And it also
Gotcha.
helps that they have that nice long 3-hour launch window, so if weather is cooperating at a slightly different time, they have some time to move that T0 around and hopefully find a gap in the weather to launch today.
Exactly. This is where not having that single second instantaneous window comes in real handy for us.
But Chris, really quickly, was that is there construction or something happening around you? I was just hearing a bunch of beeping. I thought I was in Boca Chica for a second.
Ironically, the beeping you were hearing was something else, but you mentioned Boca Chica. But Jean, who used to work on the shuttle program, she was a seamstress for the space shuttle program, just came up to me and was complimenting us on our Boca Chica coverage. So it was ironic that the beeping made it sound like Boca Chica there for a minute. Yes. Yes,
Good deal.
Jean is someone we should definitely have on to talk to us one time, because she was literally one of the people who used to hand sew the thermal protection blankets and cords and ribbons for the space shuttle orbiters. So she is an absolutely fascinating person to talk to about history, which, speaking of, since we've got time, why, what's that, Thomas?
Oh, jeez.
What? Oh, yeah, speaking of shuttle, here we are.
Speaking of shuttle, nice.
Yeah, so actually, 2 of the 3 former Space Shuttle mobile launch platforms are out and about, making runs up and down the crawlerway on the crawler transporters, as NASA is continuing to test them from all the upgrades that they've done to them, to the crawlers, since the end of the shuttle program. So this one that you see actually on the crawlerway right now is actually loaded down with a bunch of concrete bars, basically. Das, didn't you say you had figured out how much each of those extra concrete things weighs?
Well, there's just it's big stacks of concrete and rebar reinforced concrete, basically, and looking like that much concrete is probably 40 or 50,000 pounds a pop, and they've got a lot of them on there. So they're doing. It looks like they're doing a test to see how much mass this thing can carry.
Indeed, because one of the things the crawlers are being, or rather, one of the crawlers is being tested, because we actually only upgraded one of them to be able to carry the full SLS stack out to the pad. They're doing tests to make sure that the crawlers can handle the weight of not just the SLS mobile launch platform, which we've seen taken back and forth from the pad several times, but also the weight of the actual vehicle, because each one of those solid rocket motors on SLS, each one of them weighs over 3.5 million pounds. It is an incredibly heavy vehicle when it rolls out. So they're doing runs up and down the crawlerway with the former shuttle pads, getting that tested out, and it's actually moving. Not that you can tell. But it is
Yep.
actually moving, and every once in a while you can see them spraying the safety water in front to minimize the dust as the crawler pulverizes the Tennessee River rocks on the crawlerway as it goes. So anyway, former shuttle stuff is out here right now, helping NASA test some things out for the Space Launch System, which will be rolling out to the pad next year. But this is the star of our show today, the Falcon 9 sitting on pad 39A, and it looks like we're just over an hour from the new target. Is that right, Thomas?
Yes, that is correct. We're just over an hour from liftoff, which is currently targeted for 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, that is a little bit into a window that extends till noon Eastern Time, so if weather continues to be uncooperative, they can push that time back even farther. But right now, they are just about an hour from now is when they are targeting a launch. And this mission is something that we don't know a whole lot about, as it is a highly classified mission, and even though on some of these classified NROL missions, we kind of have an idea what's on board. This one, not so much. This is a pretty classified and pretty mysterious payload for the National Reconnaissance Office. This is not the first time SpaceX has launched something like this. In fact, this mission is kind of being compared to SpaceX's other big NRO mission that they've launched to date, the NROL-76 mission. This launch is following a similar heading and is following a similar flight profile in the fact that the booster will be able to fly back to Cape Canaveral and perform a return to launch site landing. In fact, that other mission also launched from Pad 39A, which is where this one is launching from. Um, so this mission likely going to low Earth orbit, just based on the fact that the first stage has enough performance remaining to perform a boost back burn and land at landing zone 1 today. Um, the difference being, when compared to other NRO and national security missions that SpaceX has launched, as this mission is using a flight-proven booster. This booster has flown 4 times before on 2 CRS missions, a Starlink mission, and most recently the SAOCOM 1B mission, which was also the most recent mission to return to launch site and land at LZ-1. So this booster making its 5th flight carrying a national security payload. And this is interesting because the Department of Defense is kind of leaning into using flight-proven hardware from SpaceX on their missions. One of the last customers of SpaceX to allow flight-proven hardware to support their missions. So that's a big milestone for this mission as well. It is also interesting because this mission was not acquired or procured under the sort of standard national security launch bidding system where they kind of publicly announce whether SpaceX or ULA, earns this mission and they announce it like a couple years in advance. That didn't happen for this mission. This mission was very likely commercially procured. The NRO or sometimes the Space Force does it for them, but one of those entities going out and just buying this launch directly from SpaceX without really like a public competition for this type of mission. And it's one of the different ways that they can launch payloads that maybe they have less lead time on or things like that. So it's another interesting launch from that perspective as well.
It is indeed, and I think, like you were saying, this is the second NRO flight, and it's also going from 39A like the first one did, and the first one also followed a very similar flight profile to what the Falcon 9 is flying today, heading northeast out of Kennedy. One thing that we know from the notice to airmen and the notice to mariners is that it's a 50-degree inclination orbit. Very unlikely the second stage would perform a dogleg maneuver because that would be a very high performance hit to the vehicle. And there's really no reason to launch out of the Kennedy Space Center onto an azimuth or compass heading that would bring you to a 50-degree inclination orbit. If you plan to do a dogleg maneuver to increase that orbit to a more polar trajectory, because you can launch northeast up to a 57-degree inclination orbit, and you can launch south into a polar orbit from here. So more than likely, the heading that it's going out on, because that's the most efficient thing, you follow the heading that gets you to your orbit at the end of your burn. 50-degree inclination orbit, and unless the satellite, like you were saying, Thomas, like unless the satellite's really, really light in mass, like 500 or 600 kilograms, this is most likely a low Earth orbit mission with a orbital altitude most likely lower than 450 kilometers, just based on the fact that the first stage will come back here. But that's really all we know about it, which is
Right.
intriguing.
But we can talk about the Falcon 9 milestone. This is booster 1059 flying its 5th flight. SpaceX really getting into some higher numbers as far as booster reuse goes. Obviously a brand new second stage, and I believe SpaceX has not mentioned anything about reused fairings on this flight, so I believe the fairings are also brand new. But this will also, of course, be SpaceX's final launch of 2020. Of course, there's got several missions planned for January, but this is the final mission of this year, and this will be SpaceX's 25th orbital launch, 26th total. Do I have that right, Chris?
I might have got
Maybe.
Chris muted
Hang,
there.
hang on,
Nope.
doing
Yeah.
a loudspeaker announcement.
All right, so Chris is listening on that. I'm going to check that number really quick before I repeat it again. Yes, 25th
You're correct.
orbital launch of Falcon 9 today. That is a record for SpaceX by a couple launches. You see a Space Force, or I guess it's technically an Air Force helicopter in the background there. Range security securing the area for launch. But yeah, 25th launch for SpaceX this year. That is a record, and that doesn't even include the suborbital in-flight abort tests. So 26 Falcon 9 lift-offs, if you will, today. And SpaceX is aiming to increase that cadence even more tomorrow. But an impressive year for SpaceX, especially when you consider that they had the COVID-19 pandemic come through, which did slow down some launches earlier this year, and they still broke their record. Shows how often they really are launching these days.
Indeed, and I believe, if my counting is correct, that if this booster lands successfully, this will break the streak for most consecutive successful recoveries of a Falcon 9 first stage without losing one.
It will.
Uh,
This is this if successful, this will be the 20th straight successful landing since a landing on a Starlink mission earlier this year did fail. But 20 straight, which would break SpaceX's record. The current record is 19, which is what they're currently at, and what the streak that they reached back in 2018 or 2019.
which is just incredible because like the flight rate of 26 launches is impressive, and then we're going for the 20th consecutive booster recovery as well. And that's all just this year. That's what we've been wanting to get to for a really, really long time in terms of the cadence of how the Falcons are launching and being recovered here.
Yeah. And everybody, just really quickly, remember Chris is out there. It's pretty windy this morning, so we are getting a lot of wind noise off of his mic. We're trying to deal with that. We've got the improvements on the way. It just takes time to ship stuff around after y'all's honestly insane support of the Starship stuff that was going on. We are turning some of that back around for some technology improvements here, but they are not quite down to the Cape yet. So thank you for being understanding with Chris's wind noise that we're dealing with here today. Thomas, back to you.
Sure. In fact, we should get through some questions and super chats that have come through while we were starting up the stream. Again, we're about just under 20 minutes before the countdown really begins, assuming that they will still target that 9:45 liftoff. Again, we're looking at weather, but right now everything on track. So while we wait for that, I'm going to go through some super chats here. Jerwa with the first super chat says, first. Well, you pretty much nailed it. Thanks for the super chat. Appreciate the support. Here is a good question, Chris. James Brown with a super chat, thank you, asks, how does SpaceX relocate Falcon 9 first stage boosters from one pad to the other? What do they use to do that?
Oh, that's an excellent question. Yeah, so they actually, speaking of former space shuttle technology, they actually use the old 76-wheel transporter that NASA used to use to move Discovery, Atlantis, Endeavour, and Columbia around between their orbiter processing facility hangars and the vehicle assembly building when they were brought over to be mated to the external tank and solid rocket booster stack. And after the shuttle program ended and NASA didn't need that anymore, SpaceX took it and modified it to be able to move the Falcon 9 first stages around Cape Canaveral.
And if you watch our 24/7 Fleet Camp stream, especially shortly after a booster return, you will, there you go, right on cue. Sometimes you will catch a glimpse of those transporters as once a stage comes into port and they offload it off the drone ship, they will put it horizontal and then place it onto that transporter to be brought back onto base towards the hangars. So you can catch a glimpse of those operations on Fleet Camp. Let's see some more super chats. Brewtime Continuum with the super chat. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Tim with the new membership. Thanks for joining on. Appreciate it. And Blake Parsons with the super chat. Been around here before. Thanks for the support. Hey, from Australia. Love the streams. Here's something to keep them coming. Is this the first time this booster has launched? No, this is the 5th flight for booster 1058. And you can see from our camera view, it's still got some scorch marks from re-entry. So you can see this booster has been to space and back a few times before and will hopefully do so again today. Rough Rider Show with one last super chat here, asking what is the reason for the delay for Turksat 5A. I do believe that is the next SpaceX mission. However, that mission is not until January, we understand it. I'm not sure we know exactly what the delay is, although I do know that the aircraft, the Antonov transport aircraft that are usually used to transport satellites, especially from international destinations, that would have delivered the satellite to Cape Canaveral. I know that fleet of aircraft was grounded at some point due to some maintenance issues that might have just delayed the satellite getting to Cape Canaveral and thus been the reason for the launch delay. I'm not sure that's confirmed, but it's possible that that was the driving factor for that.
Yeah, if we don't have a confirmation of it, but that's one of the factors that we understand, Thomas. The other is the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and the increasing lockdowns and
Yes.
safety measures going on across Europe and Eastern Asia. And it's entirely possible that this satellite right now is just stuck in the country it was built in, and just can't leave because of those protections and lockdowns as well right now.
So there we go. And we've got some questions that we can talk about. So let's just do this. Jay Malik asking, why is this not at 39A? Well, it is at 39A. You're looking at it. This is Launch Complex 39A at the Kennedy Space Center. That is the pad they are actually using today. They are not using pad 40. They, of course, are trying to alternate those two pads to kind of give each pad time to be turned around and prepared for their next launch. So for maximum launch cadence, they usually alternate. And the most recent mission, which I'm not forgetting what the mission actually. What was the last Falcon 9, Chris? I'm blank. Oh, Sirius XM,
Yeah.
SXM-7 satellite from Pad 40, and now this mission from 39A. Random Tube saying, asking about the weather. We are looking at it. We have not. Chris, have we heard anything about what the weather is currently observed at? Is the weather observed go, or are they still looking at some violated conditions? Do you know?
That is a great question and information that if I was in a studio, I would have access to, but not in the field.
Okay, so we'll keep an eye on that. We do have the mission control feed from SpaceX in our ears, and that should be being replayed into the stream now as well.
Working on it.
So
Working on it.
working on Das is setting it up.
Yeah.
So
It
uh,
just came up 3 minutes ago, so I'm working
right,
on
yeah,
that right now.
perfect. So once we have that, SpaceX will hopefully call out any weather updates. So we will stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
Again, they have lots of time to deal with the weather if they need to.
Indeed.
Here,
Indeed. And sorry about that. I think there's like a 1 second delay, Thomas. I'm not meaning to interrupt you. Not being rude on purpose. I think we are roughly at the same time period though, where they previously pushed 45 minutes into the window, which would make sense because they'd have a good idea or a good sense of, are we even close enough to give it a shot to begin fueling in 13 minutes, which is when fueling will begin. So yeah, we'll see, but we should have an answer here soon as to whether or not they're going to make the attempt for 9:45.
absolutely, and one benefit of having that long window is if they're not confident that the weather will cooperate, they have that ability to push the T0 back and push the launch time back, which means that they're not really pressured to fuel anyway and just hope that the weather clears. They have lots of time to deal with it, and they won't go into fueling if they don't think that weather is going to cooperate. Of course,
And
that also means that if they go through the countdown and weather changes unexpectedly or some other issue comes up, they also have time to do a full recycle if they need to today. So hopefully all of those factors will allow SpaceX to make sure they have a launch attempt today.
and obviously SpaceX tweeted that the reason for the delay was the weather, and they'd have
Yes.
no reason to obfuscate about that. But I'm going to use the word obfuscate since the payload customer is the National Reconnaissance Office. And it's also entirely possible that 9 a.m. was just the opening of the window the NRO put out to confuse people. And 9 a.m. was never a viable launch time for this mission. We have seen the NRO do that most recently with NROL-44, which lifted off earlier. Only 10 days ago, right? No, 7 days ago. Jeez. Yeah, last Thursday. Yeah, only 7 days ago. We saw that one have a 4-hour long launch window, and then the NRO admit every single time that, yep, but the opening of the launch window isn't actually when we can launch. It's into the window. So could also have something to do with that, although SpaceX wouldn't have any reason to obfuscate about it being a weather issue.
And a 45-minute push is a sizable delay, so I would imagine that that was not the opening of their window, that they did actually push for weather. But yeah, sometimes they put out a very broad, 9 to 12, exactly 9 a.m. to exactly 12 noon is probably not the actual launch window. The actual launch window probably falls just within that. The NRO does do that just so they don't give quite as much detail about what exactly this mission is doing publicly if they can avoid it. But a small delay due to weather. Hopefully we're just about 11 minutes away from a launch attempt. But let's gonna keep going with some questions here, and here's a good one about how much payload can the Falcon 9 lift before the booster has to perform a drone ship landing. Chris, do we know the limits of what Falcon 9 can do while it's still performing a return to launch site?
It's roughly 10,000 pounds is the maximum limit, or 10,000 pounds. Sorry. Yes, 10,000 pounds. 10,000 kilograms. Sorry. Let me try this all again. My mind is, jeez, that was horrible. Everyone forget what Chris G just said. Let's start this over again. Thomas, thank you for the wonderful question. 10,000 kilograms is the rough approximation of the upper limit of what the Falcon 9 can do and still reserve enough propellant to come back. That's not a hard number. It obviously depends on what the orbital altitude is, because the higher you want to go in orbit, the more propellant you've got to burn. So 10,000 is a rough estimate, and that's known because the first round of cargo Dragons that went to the International Space Station had roughly 10,000 kilograms of mass when they lifted off, and when they switched over to Dragon version 2, which is slightly heavier, that negated the ability for the first stages to perform return to launch site landings on cargo missions going forward. And of course, we know as well, because there's another part to this, what's the upper end of the limit in terms of mass that the Falcon 9 can still even be recovered at. And we know for low Earth orbit missions like this one is today, the upper range of recoverability on the drone ship is roughly 16,500 kilograms. And that's based on the Starling missions barely having enough propellant left in their tanks to land on the drone ships off the coast of the Carolinas.
Okay, and continuing on with some more questions here. Monica asking what the window for today is. The launch window today extends until 12 noon Eastern Time, which is 1700 UTC. So they've got, in fact, the launch window literally just opened. It is 9 a.m. Eastern right now. This is the opening of the window. However, SpaceX is targeting 9:45 at this time, so we're still about 45 minutes from launch. And again, the countdown does not really begin until T-minus 38 minutes when the poll is conducted for fuel loading. So some time before action really picks up here, but the window does extend till noon, a 3-hour window. They have plenty of time to get this launch off today.
And actually, Thomas, I want to go back to the previous question if I can, because there's another sort of statement to make for that. So when we talk about mass, right, mass is important in terms of whether or not the Falcon 9 can perform a return to launch site landing, but so too is where the payload's going. And I wanted to caveat this because, 10,000 pounds for a low Earth orbit mission, or 10,000 kilograms for a low Earth orbit mission, yeah, the Falcon 9 can come back just fine. But it's also launched payloads incredibly lighter than that. It launched the Transiting Exosurvey satellite for NASA and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology a few years ago. That satellite only weighed like 400 kilograms, and the Falcon 9 had to land on a drone ship downrange because the first stage had to burn so much of its propellant to leave enough extra propellant in the second stage to do a translunar injection burn of that payload. So it's a function of the mass of the vehicle and the trajectory of the payload and the trajectory the rocket has to fly that gets you what your mission specific minimum or your mission specific maximum mass is to permit a return to launch site landing.
Good deal. Let's see, more questions here. Here's a good one from Ed. For a return to launch site, do they always use one specific landing pad out of the two, or do they rotate between them? So SpaceX has landing zones 1 and 2 at Cape Canaveral. However, as far as I know, the only time they use LZ-2 is when a side booster of a Falcon Heavy mission does so. When they're bringing 2 boosters back, they use both pads at once, of course. But on Falcon 9 flights, I believe they only use landing zone 1, which is a slightly bigger landing pad. Chris, do I have that correct? Do we know if they've ever landed a Falcon 9 on LZ-2 just for the heck of it?
You are. I would love to see them do that, but no, you are absolutely correct. Yep.
So there you go. I do believe it's likely because landing zone 1 is a slightly bigger concrete pad, although LZ-2 is not small. But I believe they usually just try to use that one if they're going to pick one of the two. Wonder if there's any. I don't know if there's any other big technical reasons why they do that. But as far as we know, that is what they do.
I believe they use LZ-2 for some other types of testing as well.
Okay.
And because that whole area isn't just the landing area for the Falcon 9s or the Falcon Heavy side cores. It services a whole bunch of other things for SpaceX as well.
And Chris, we have a question here. What is the fastest that SpaceX has reused a booster? What's the quickest turnaround between 2 reflights or 2 flights of the same Falcon 9 booster? Do we know?
Yes, there are 2 boosters that are actually tied for this. 51 days is the current record, and that is a worldwide record for back-to-back reuse of the same orbital class vehicle. And it is the first booster to break it, so the one that actually holds the record is the Demo 2 booster, the one that launched Bob and Doug in May, and then 51 days later launched the NASASpaceflight flight for South Korea.
There we go. And here is a good question. Chris, we're going to ask about something in your camera feed, and I know you know a lot about it. Are those the emergency side baskets by the tower?
They are indeed. So if you look up the tower, almost toward the top of where the big rectangular black part ends, you see the crew access arm that's fully pulled back, that little white arm that's fully pulled back against the tower. And then right next to it, sort of jutting outward toward the water tower, there toward the left-hand side, you see a little structure that juts out, and those are the slide wire baskets for the crew flights for Falcon 9, yes.
Let's see. More questions here. I'm going to keep. Actually, we have a super chat question. Max, thank you for the super chat. Do the Starling satellites have a camera or cameras on board? I don't believe we've ever seen camera views from a SpaceX Starling satellite. Although I guess they could. The Starling satellite bus could be customized to do different things.
Load. Go no-go poll is complete. We are go for propellant loading and launch.
And we just heard through the countdown net, thank you DOS for setting that up, we are go for propellant load.
It worked. Chad, did y'all hear that? It's a little bit quiet. I'm going to see if I can turn it up some, but that was the mission control audio being piped both to the stream and into our headsets here, so everybody that's on our stream can hear it at the same time. So, good deal.
And exciting to hear. Exciting to hear indeed. So, as I said, don't take gloomy and overcast weather to be a bad thing. Remember, Falcon 9 launches from Vandenberg, so it understands clouds and fog.
Has anybody realized this is an RTLS, right? This is coming back to the land. Yes. We don't get a lot of those where they're actually coming back to the LZ. I have never seen an RTLS where it's not mostly clear skies. Is this rocket just going to come out of the clouds all of a sudden? So this will disappear within 15 or 20 seconds if the cloud layer holds after it leaves the pad. Very, very similar to the first Falcon 9 to launch from 39A back in 2017 on a cargo resupply run to the space station. The cloud deck, or the fog deck, really was barely above the lightning mast at the top of 39A. And Falcon 9 went up just fine and came right back down just fine because its radar systems can see right through clouds, so it always knows where it is. And cloud cover itself would not be an impediment to landing the rocket. Well, it knows where it is because it knows where it isn't, right? Well, hopefully it knows where it isn't. Oh, DOS, this is philosophical, and I've been up way too long already for this. Oh, it's not philosophical. I mean, you have to find the deviation.
All right, we need to educate Chris on the
We'll-
missile knows where it is because of where it is.
We'll link that to you, Chris. It's a meme.
But yeah, and hopefully Chris will still be able to track it as it comes out of the clouds. I know it'll be challenging with the cloud deck, but hopefully we'll get a great view of Falcon 9 coming back. Chris, what is the view of a return to launch site from the press site? Because I know I was with you. In fact, the last time there was a return to launch site was this exact booster, but it was launching from Pad 40, so we were over on the ITL Causeway. What's the view like of a landing when viewed from where you are?
Yep, not good. Yep, it will disappear behind trees 15 seconds before touchdown.
Okay.
With the cloud deck today, I don't know if I'll actually reacquire it. I will try my hardest. I'm positioned where I filmed them before. I know where they come down.
On
but I will do
countdown
my
net.
best, but
All operators for awareness. In the need for an urgent abort, operators shall call hold on the primary countdown net. Launch control will abort the auto sequence immediately. Operators shall proceed to launch abort steps in 1.160. Otherwise, brief the CE and the LD for non-urgent no-go conditions, and they will approve aborting the auto sequence. As we are in firing for today, for local personnel, in the event of a fire alarm, key operators that are noted below in step 57.72 will remain at their post while the alarm is evacuated. In the event that personnel safety is threatened, evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly outside.
all right, and that is a standard standard briefing that all launch team personnel get ahead of every Falcon 9 launch. There is nothing to be concerned with of that. It actually means everything is progressing and that we are to start propellant load and the auto sequence in 30 seconds.
Yes, that is a completely standard thing. I know they say a lot of things about aborts and alarms and things. They're just preparing the teams in the event of those things occurring. But that is a standard briefing we hear before every launch. Everything proceeding nominally.
Yeah, and actually one of the things in there is actually a really important thing because it's something you wouldn't normally think about. What happens if you're fueling the vehicle and you're 10 minutes from liftoff and the fire alarm goes off at the launch center? Well, if it's fake, you don't want to stop the sequence if you don't have to because everything's automated and I mean there are thermal things. I mean, in the vehicle it would be safe to stop everything at that point and
launch
start
auto
detaking
sequence
and
has
saving
begun.
it. And there we go. Launch auto has begun. That means the auto sequence is underway. The ground systems are currently in control of everything with Falcon 9 monitoring. And Falcon 9 will actually take control of the countdown at the T-1 minute mark. But anyway, it's a thing you have to consider is if a fire alarm goes off and you're in terminal count, you want to verify if that alarm is real or not before you evacuate all of your essential personnel. So it's kind of cool to hear that because it's honestly something I hadn't heard a launch team briefed for until SpaceX made it public.
It's kind of cool to hear it because it means that I got the thing working correctly too.
Also that.
So it's good for me to hear it.
There you go, Doss. Yeah.
Chris, has that ever come up, like an emergency in the launch control building while they were conducting launch operations? Do you know?
I do not believe so in terms of like an emergency that wouldn't be weather related, right? Like one thing we have had to contend with sometimes in countdowns are really, really severe thunderstorms, embedded tornadoes, and things like that. So we've had to contend with that type of weather emergencies before, not like evacuate or take shelter because of a tornado, but we have had to deal with inclement weather and procedures like that before in countdowns. Yeah. But to my knowledge, no, a launch control center has not like caught fire or anything like that type of emergency during the countdown.
That is good to hear. Let's see here. Gonna dive into some more questions here. Brady, how does SpaceX choose if they want to land on land or sea? This is a good question. That is determined specifically by whatever that mission's requirements are. Falcon 9 needs to, of course, the primary mission is always to deliver the payload to its correct orbit. So if it is a heavy payload or it's going to a higher orbit, that means the Falcon 9 needs to use more of its energy on board to get it where it needs to go, and therefore usually doesn't have a lot of fuel reserves to come back and land at landing zone 1. So it will instead perform a drone ship landing downrange where there's no boost back burn required. Falcon 9 can just follow its ballistic trajectory and land in the ocean. But if it is going to a lower orbit and or the payload is light enough, Falcon 9 can come back and do a boost back burn and then land in landing zone 1 because it has the extra fuel available to do that. So that is what determines whether it's a drone ship or return to launch site landing.
And I just want to give a quick weather update. Again, we're still good. Everything's good. But I had mentioned that, you know, the cloud deck had risen above the VAB and the pad. And the cloud deck is now back at the top of the VAB and back at the top near the lightning pads at the tower. So, again, like, this could be Florida's version of Vandenberg today. It's definitely what Florida seems to be trying to emulate here. But they're definitely getting close to liftoff. They are currently closing the giant door at the vehicle assembly building's transfer aisle, getting it buttoned up for the liftoff. Today, Stephen Marr just got here and he's wearing a Festivus shirt. I love it. And that's the cackle that just happened. Anyway, but all the facilities are also in final preparations for the liftoff of Falcon 9 with NROL-108. And the crawler transporter is still inching its way down the crawlerway with the former shuttle launch pad, which is now completely behind a tree. So I can't show it.
Okay. Stephen Marr, of course, a photographer for NASASpaceflight, so he is around the press site parts as well, hoping to capture some stunning images of launch. And hopefully the cloud deck does not interfere so much that our view of the launch here today is hopefully pretty good. We will also have the official SpaceX camera views, so whatever looks the best we will make sure that we show. But hopefully the views from the press site of launch and landing are good despite the weather. Which is not impeding the launch itself right now, as we are about 5 minutes into propellant load. Right now, RP1 kerosene and liquid oxygen is flowing into the first stage, as well as RP1 kerosene into the second stage. Liquid oxygen for the second stage will not begin flowing until T-minus 16 minutes, and that will continue until just about 2.5 minutes before launch, when all of the tanks are then fully loaded and ready to go. But as the countdown proceeds, we're going to go through some more questions here. Charlie has a question. Do they have to do any refurbishment of the landing pads? Chris, do we know of any work that needs to be done on the landing pads between landings?
That's a good question. I mean, I think they go out and they try to mitigate dust buildup as much as possible. But I mean, no, unless something were to be damaged or it reaches like a life cycle requirement, those pads are pretty sturdy. Because there's also it's a good question because it dovetails nicely with the drone ships. Just read the instructions, and of course, I still love you. Neither of which are being used today. But they also don't get a huge amount of refurbishment between supporting landings either. It's kind of a when it's needed or when life cycles are meant for inspections.
Thank you, Chris.
But and sorry, I should finish the rest of that thought. The main reason for that is the landing pads are built kind of the same way with the same kind of concrete and everything that launch pads are built out of, and you're not repairing the concrete or the pad structure after every liftoff. You're just kind of refurbishing some of the things that get blasted in terms of equipment as the vehicle takes off, and you don't have equipment that gets blasted like that at the landing pads. All of that equipment is kept far away and then moved in for the recovery effort of the booster, so there's not even like ground equipment on the likes of the launch pad that would have to be refurbed at the landing pads.
Yeah, and once again, just a reminder, Chris is battling some winds there, so some of his audio coming in and out, but we're still working on that. But thank you, Chris. Let's see, more questions here. Carrie asks, what specific equipment does the vehicle need to deploy a satellite? So Falcon 9 has a payload adapter at the top of the second stage that is almost always built by SpaceX. On some rare occasions, a different customer, like someone involved with the payload itself, can build their own payload adapter. That happened on the Zuma mission, the highly classified DoD mission that Falcon 9 launched, and of course there's a whole story behind what happened on that mission, where said payload adapter did not actually function properly, but it was not SpaceX's adapter. Because this is a classified NRO mission, it is possible that that is happening again today, don't know if the payload adapter is SpaceX's or whoever built the NRO payload for the Reconnaissance Office. We don't know that for sure, but there is a interface between the top of Falcon 9's upper stage and the payload to deploy the payload into its correct orbit once Falcon 9's second stage delivers it there.
And hey, I tried to create a little bit of a windbreak with a jacket. I don't know if it helped, but I tried.
Right now, you sound good, Chris, so let's stick with that. Thank you.
Woohoo! I sound good. You heard it here first, folks.
Got a couple of super chats that have come through here. William says, I love listening to you guys for launches. So much great information and conversation. Thank you so much. Glad you enjoy. Chris is currently getting swarmed by birds, it looks like.
Okay, Alfred Hitchcock has arrived at the launch site. Wow, that was impressive. That was actually super impressive zoomed out. There have to be close to like 1,000 birds that just went by. It's really weird. I don't know where they came from either.
I just
Anyway,
looked over at our
welcome
preview and
to
saw a
Welcome.
million birds flying by.
Yeah.
Blake Parsons with another super chat. Thank you so much. Will we hear the sonic boom when it lands? Absolutely. Even if we do not catch that glimpse of it coming through the clouds, there will absolutely be a sonic boom as Falcon 9 descends towards the landing pads, and you will definitely hear it.
In fact, not one, but 3.
Ah, that's true.
Yes, so the Falcon 9 actually produces 3 sonic booms when it comes into land. The engines, the legs, and the grid fins up at the top, at the top of the vehicle, all of those surfaces that kind of stick out from the vehicle. And there are 3 of them on Falcon 9, not just the top and the bottom. So there are 3 sonic booms that you will hear, which makes the Falcon heavy landings even more spectacular because there are 6 of them in rapid succession.
And it sounds awesome, absolutely. And of course, that is not too far off from back in the shuttle landing days of where you would have twin sonic booms from the nose and tail of the shuttle orbiters as they came back. But Falcon 9 one-upping shuttle in that regard with 1 extra sonic boom on every landing. But yes, hopefully, can't wait to hear that on the mic today. Here is a good question. Tom Hunter, how many satellites has the NRO put into space this year? Seems like they're launching every other week. They did just recently have yet another mission, the NROL-44 mission, and of course launching the L-108 mission today. We don't actually know the exact number because all we know is how many launches they have had, which I believe, and I'm checking my notes really quickly here.
3 this year, right?
Well, let's see. I'm gonna. All right, so I have
no, 4, because they had. And there was. Oh no, that's the Space Force. Yeah, 3 NRO flights, right?
I'm looking. So we had
Yeah.
1 on the Birds of a Feather mission on Electron, so that was the first one. The second mission would have been. They also had a rideshare payload on the Don't Stop Me Now Rocket Lab mission, so 2. We then had NROL-129 on Minotaur 4, which we know actually had at least 4 payloads on board, but that's 3 launches, but that's up to 6 payloads. I'm going to keep going through my list really quick here. Let's see, the next one was not until ULA Atlas 5 on the NROL-101 mission. And then of course we had NROL-44 on Delta 4 Heavy, and now NROL-108. So I think that was 6 launches, but one of them we know had 4 payloads on board. So up to 10 payloads, although some of those might have had more than 1 payload on board as well. So
Totally
6 launches.
The ones were this year. Wow. Yeah. And just a quick update: your eyes aren't deceiving you. It's misting and raining now. So we're kind of losing our view of the launch pad with Falcon 9 out there on it. You can kind of see it venting a little bit, but it's gonna be interesting.
Chris, how are you? And is my camera getting wet?
No, I have wrapped the camera and everything.
Okay, all right, good deal. Just checking in. Wanted to make sure that the camera was okay.
I've kept everything safe. Yes.
Notice that Dust doesn't ask if Chris is okay. He asks if the camera's okay. Let's see.
It's actually one of those weird myths where like I can't tell if we're just in the cloud, and because the wind is blowing, it feels like it's raining. Because if it's raining now, I can't imagine they'd still be fueling, because that's a massive violation for liftoff. But if this is just a cloud and I'm just feeling rain because the wind is blowing the water molecules around, then we might still be good. I don't know. This is fascinating. I don't even know if at this point we'll see the pad liftoff. So,
It's like they're launching
As
from
I said-
Vandenberg today. What's happening here?
as I was saying, welcome to Vandenberg. Only it's the Kennedy Space Center.
I mean, looking at Fleet Cam over there, it is localized to you. Super cloudy and overcast, but we're not getting rain at Port Canaveral. That's about 10, 11 miles away, though. So we'll have to see what happens here as we come up to the 20-minute vent. 2 minutes away before that, it'll be interesting to see if we see it.
And
I
the
mean-
Countdown Net has not had any call-outs or anything calling for a weather violation or anything like that. So as far as we know, everything is still proceeding.
Now the other thing to bear in mind here is that sometimes when the weather does go red, right, or no go after they've started fueling, they just keep fueling because the Falcon 9 finishes fueling 2.5 minutes before liftoff, so they can't stop fueling and still make their targeted liftoff time. And this is Florida. Sometimes you do get into no-go weather conditions close to account that clear before T0. One thing they also look at is what is the current observed weather and what is the forecasted weather. So it's possible you can be an observed no-go but a forecasted go for liftoff. It's also entirely possible, sometimes we've seen SpaceX do this, they get into the terminal count, the weather trends badly against them, and they just keep going until T-minus 1 minute because it's launch practice, and in some ways it's easier to just let the vehicle finish fueling and get completely fueled and then detank. And we've seen them do that several times where they'll scrub, but then just continue to pump fuel into the vehicle to finish the auto sequence and get it. Because if you can get a uniform thermal change on your vehicle, which you would, I see the T-minus 20-minute vent. With my
Really?
eye.
Yep, we
Yeah, we
just
can see it.
we can just see a glimpse of it. So
So-
fueling, then the countdown's still proceeding at T-minus 20 minutes despite the weather coming in here.
I'm gonna hop off comms here and get a rain jacket for myself.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good. Thomas, it looks like the NRO is really starting to take these secret missions
Dude,
seriously.
I was totally gonna make that joke. I was gonna be like,
Oh, no.
the weather is coming in to block the launch because it's an NRO classified mission. Das beat me to it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
upstage
you're
you
good.
there.
But it was the joke that needed to be said.
It is.
Meanwhile, I'm gonna go through some more questions here. Here's one: why are there no Starling launches in December? That's because they had a bunch of customer missions to launch. They have this mission for the National Reconnaissance Office. They just launched a satellite for Sirius XM. Were those the only two in December, or was there one at the beginning of the month as well? It was the
There were
the
two in December. Or
CRS
sorry.
CRS-21, right?
Yes.
So they had the CRS cargo mission to the International Space Station as well. So those were 3 missions for paying customers, which always take scheduled precedent over SpaceX's internal Starlink missions. They're kind of using those Starlink launches to fill gaps where they don't have any paying customer payloads ready to go yet. While they're waiting for other customers or whatever, that's when they'll kind of fill out their manifesto with Starlink missions. So that is why we haven't seen any Decembers, because they've been busy launching payloads for external customers. And I'm going to continue with some more questions here. Here's one. Sandy with a question. I'm a channel member, but still a bit confused who Chris B versus Chris G is. So there's 2 Chris's at NASASpaceflight. They're both managing editors for the site. Chris Bergen is the founder and managing editor. You'll hear him on some of the streams sometimes, though he's not here today. Right now you're hearing the voice of me, Thomas Berger, but earlier you were hearing the voice of Chris Gebhardt, Chris G, who is the assistant managing editor and is the one in Florida who has rolled out for launch coverage today to get us this beautiful view of what is now basically a fog layer with a vague outline of the fixed server structure, because that's about all we're seeing at this point.
That is correct. I must compliment SpaceX on starting their year with a cloud that blocked the in-flight abort for those of us at the press site at the Kennedy Space Center, and ending it with a Vandenberg impression. Way to go. Way to bookend the year.
Chris is bringing up source subjects with the cloud at in-flight abort again. There we go. For those who don't know, at the in-flight abort test, a bunch of us were at the press site hoping to see a Falcon 9 explode on purpose as a result of the abort test, but cloud right between the press site and the explosion. Of course, DOS caught it because he was out on a boat and had a different vantage point, but those at the press site, we were not so lucky.
But we did get to see the fully intact second stage falling at terminal velocity and slamming into the ocean, which was really cool.
That was pretty cool.
I was, in fact, on a boat, Thomas. Don't you ever forget.
DOS won't let us forget that, I don't think.
I mean, that was awesome when DOS was like, what if I'm on a boat? And we're like, sure. and then, of course, he's the only one that got to see it.
So the launch pad has completely disappeared here, it looks like.
Correct. With Mark 1 eyeballs, I can still barely make it out.
It's like the ghost of Falcon 9 and the tower in the distance. We can see the outline a little bit, I think, but
well, I mean, hey, they're just really hitting the season here. I mean, we got ghosts, we got clouds, it's chilly. I mean, heck, if Bob Marley shows up and wants to teach me about the true meaning of Christmas, I'm going to be concerned here.
Did you say Bob Marley?
Yeah!
That's not how I remember the story, but I'm going to roll with it.
Whatever his name is, I don't know, Marley something. I don't know. I might be remembering the name from the Muppets version of it because that's my favorite version of the Christmas Carol, but whatever.
Anyways, y'all, we're coming up on 16 minutes before the launch. We did see that they were continuing with the propellant loading. We saw that big T-minus 20-minute vent, kinda, through the mist or rain over there. Chris Gebhardt is out at the Cape, braving the rain so that we can bring you this silhouette of the launch today. And we also have Fleet Cam on the scene over at Port Canaveral. Of course, Fleet Cam may not see anything. The rocket may be into the clouds before Fleet Cam even sees it rise above the horizon there. So we will see what is happening. As of right now, they're still counting down, aren't they, y'all? That's the last information.
They are. Everything's still proceeding despite the lack of visibility, but hopefully will not impede the actual launch. And again, they haven't called anything out on the countdown net. So as far as we know, everything is still continuing. Excuse me, now that they are within T-minus 16 minutes, liquid oxygen is now flowing into the second stage as well. So all of the tanks on board Falcon 9 now being fueled for launch.
All right.
But
either way, we're gonna bring you whatever views we can here.
Yes.
Chris is out there, and Fleet Cam's on the case. It's an RTLS as well. Maybe we'll get lucky and we'll see it punch out of the clouds right before it lands. But whatever is visible, we will share with you, right?
Absolutely. In the meantime, we've got some more questions, so I'm going to keep going through them. A question here, any sign of the new drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas? Elon has mentioned that a third drone ship will appear at some point. We have seen zero traces of said drone ship, and believe me, we've been looking. Unfortunately, no sign of that just yet, but we're keeping an eye out. Let's see here. Here is a couple new super chats and memberships that have come through.
That's my bad. I got it.
I was going to say, I just
there we
did
go.
I think the SpaceX official feed coming online.
I was going to say disco music. Dun, 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 dun.
Ben Chicken with the new membership, thank you so much. Peter with the new membership, thanks for signing on. Here is a question from Orion. What would you predict to have more liftoffs in 2021, Falcon or Starship? I think 2021 is still a safe bet to say Falcon will have more liftoffs. Starship is still very much in development and doing lots of test flights, but Falcon 9's launch cadence is, and including some Falcon Heavy missions next year. Between that, I think it's a safe bet to say Falcon will still have more liftoffs. Start talking about May 2022 and onward, maybe that question becomes a little more relevant. But right now, safe bet Falcon.
Yeah, what are there? Are there two Falcon Heavies this year? There's the NASASpaceflight flight in the first half of the year, and isn't June 2021 one of SpaceX's NASA missions on Falcon Heavy? Or do I have that wrong?
Is it? I think that before I correct you and turn out to actually be wrong, I should probably just check. Hold on.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's either 2021 or 2022. I just can't remember which one it is off the top of my head.
Yeah. Oh, the Psyche mission for NASA is not till 2022.
There we go.
The
2022.
two missions we know of for next year are both for the U.S. Space Force, USSF 44 and USSF 52 are the two Falcon Heavy missions next year.
So 2. Okay, good. Yes.
Yes.
All right. Oh, well, the view at the launch pad actually looks significantly better than what we can see at the press site.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I've rolled that in there so we can see the rocket some.
Yeah, good, a much better camera view there. Continuing on with some super chats here. Mark, thank you so much for your support. Future Martian 97, a regular on the streams, thank you so much for the super chat. And I'm going to go back into some more regular questions here. Here is a good one. Ed, what do the numbers on the NROL missions mean? That is a great question because sometimes it does not completely make sense. Of course, the most recent NRO mission was NROL-44, and this is NROL-108. So the numbers are not really in sequential order. Our best theory, and again, some of this is classified, but the most kind of the prevailing theory on when the numbers come out is when the mission is approved or authorized. That's when the mission gets that NROL designation. The numbers are not in order of the launches themselves. So this is since it's NROL-108, this mission is probably relatively new as far as when the mission was designed and authorized, which also makes sense in the fact that this mission was likely commercially procured on a short lead time basis instead of the sort of normal contracting architecture for the big DoD missions. So that's another piece of evidence in favor of that theory. But they're they don't necessarily correspond to what order the flights actually launch in. Good question though. Here is a good one from Thomas. Cool name, Thomas. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just an extension to that. Because this mission will actually get a numerical name change after it makes it. Right, and those do go in numerical order, regardless of when a mission is scheduled to launch. It goes by when they actually launch.
Yes.
Yeah, and I believe it's USA 230 something will be the one for this one. 232 or something like that will be the designation it gets, or something like that.
And that's similar to. Excuse me, if you're familiar with the... Oh, well, we have real quick, a live view from the fairing catcher. Which fairing catcher is out there today?
Mystery and Ghost. Mystery is the fairing catcher that's out there today, supported by Go Searcher. Mischief is still undergoing maintenance at Fort Canaveral.
And there's some rough seas out there for Mystery, so hopefully hopefully they can still make a fairing recovery effort, or at least fish them out of the waters, but some rough seas out there, it looked like. But bringing back into this question that I have not actually answered yet, Thomas, cool name Thomas, has a question. Since the payload is seriously classified, would the payload come shrouded so that the SpaceX team cannot see the payload? This is actually interesting. Obviously not everyone on the SpaceX team needs to know exactly what the payload looks like. If they are using that SpaceX payload adapter, the SpaceX team is responsible for that system obviously needs to know how the payload will interface with the rocket, but they can usually compartmentalize that information, and it's very much on a need-to-know basis. Same thing goes for any other launch provider.
Spacecraft is on internal power.
A classified mission.
And that was the internal power call out, it sounds like, over the launch net there.
Yeah, so the payload is now on internal power, another step in the countdown as we proceed. But yeah, so they would, not everyone on the SpaceX team would get to see the payload. In fact, maybe no one at the SpaceX actually gets to see the entire payload. All they need to see exactly what interface they're working with or things like that. And again, that is due to the classified nature of the payload. And another question here from Thomas. He has another question. What is the National Reconnaissance Office? The National Reconnaissance Office is the United States main intelligence gathering agency. They operate all of the reconnaissance satellites for the U.S. Department of Defense, all of our spy satellites and things like that. And they conduct all of that reconnaissance for the United States military. So that's just the agency responsible.
And they're kind of oddly independent, whereas we've seen, the Air Force and the Space Force have to put out all of these contracts and make everything very public when they're choosing a launch provider for a particular mission. The NRO doesn't have to do that. And just like this mission, they can keep it an absolute secret until SpaceX absolutely has to file the permits to the Federal Communications Commission for licensing for all of the communications with the vehicle during launch, and there's a certain deadline by which you have to apply, and that's what gives these missions away. And then the NRO goes, "Yep, that's us," and nope, we're not telling you anything else. That's
Right,
essentially
yeah.
what happened with this one. Yeah, this was kept secret until about 3 weeks before its originally targeted launch date in October, and then that mission, and then it just slipped into December. No real reason was offered as to why, but here we are. Don't know why my voice cracked like that, but here we are.
No, you're good. Yeah, and again, because it's a classified mission, we don't know exactly why it slipped from October, but October to December, that's not really a large slip in the grand scheme of things. Pretty standard for spaceflight. But sometimes the NRO missions do kind of come out more publicly along with some other DoD missions, and sometimes they kind of come up as a surprise like this one did. Depends on how exactly the mission was authorized and how quickly they want it launched and things like that.
And that image that you just saw that was looking down at the top of the payload fairing, if you saw those little gray stripes at the tip of the payload fairing, that's actually extra thermal protection, because it's the top of the rocket that heats up the most due to friction with the atmosphere during ascent. So they add a little bit more thermal protection system to the top, and that's that little gray stripe that you saw in the previous feed.
Okay, and just one last question before we get into the business end of the countdown, because I want to talk about this. Nick says his dad passed away on Tuesday and loved watching your launch coverage over the last few months. Nick, so sorry for your loss. I'm glad that we were able to entertain, and hopefully your dad really did enjoy our coverage. Thinking of him today, thank you so much for your kind words.
So with you, Nick. Yeah.
Right now, we are just over 5 minutes from the scheduled launch attempt of a classified NROL-108 mission on Falcon 9 today. The NRO weather machine in full effect, as you can see Chris G's view from the press site. Getting obscured by some clouds. We've got some other camera feeds to show whatever we can see, and of course, once the rocket lifts off, hopefully the exhaust will burn off some view and we'll get an awesome shot of liftoff here. But right now we are coming up on 5 minutes, and Falcon 9 engine chill is already underway. The 9 Merlin 1D engines on Falcon 9's first stage are being thermally conditioned for launch, putting a little bit of super cold liquid oxygen through engine plumbing to cool down the engine components, and so when the full flow of RP1 kerosene and liquid oxygen flows through, the engine is not damaged by the thermal shock of the temperature change. So that is one final step right before liftoff. At T-minus 1 minute, we will hear Falcon 9 go into startup, which is when the onboard computers take control of the countdown and the tanks pressurize to flight levels. And that will be the final step before engine ignition at T-minus 3 seconds and liftoff at T-minus 0.
Indeed. And before I get configured over to launch communications mode here, just wanted to give a shout out and a thank you to my colleagues. You've been hearing Thomas Burkhart talk a lot and answer a lot of your questions as well. Thanks for getting up and being with us here today, Thomas. And on the back end, every once in a while, you hear Das or John. I like to call him John Das. Sometimes.
That's not approved.
That's not approved. There we go. And then also Michael Baylor is in the background as well, running our overlays, and he'll be operating and working with Fleet Cam if he can see anything with this one. But thank you to all of you for being on the broadcast with me this morning, and also a big shout out to Tyler Gray and Colin Fletcher, who wrote the launch article for this particular mission.
Yeah, not looking too good for Fleet Cam this morning.
Yeah.
It's not looking too good for my camera this morning.
The official stream has been running an advertisement for different satellites for the last 3 minutes now, so
Yeah, and again, I will do my best. If we launch, I will do my best to find the booster as it comes back down. But again, the cloud deck is very, very low. It's even lower than the top of the vehicle assembly building right now. It's actually lower than the VAB. I do not know if I will get it when it comes back down, but this is why we always have SpaceX's feed up, so you get visuals and you can have one-stop shopping for all of your launch needs. But with 30 seconds left in the fueling process, we are very, very close to either a launch or a decision of some point here.
Yep. So, Chris, let's
And-
get you over on your camera microphone. Go ahead and bring down your real time, and I'll bring up the camera, and then we'll have a little bit of a delay on Chris.
All right, and I am cutting audio.
All right, and I am cutting audio and going
Sounds
to
good.
camera audio.
Really
launch
quick, I just saw this message in chat saying John Doss sounds like the name of a Kerbal. It does. He's right.
That is actually accurate. That does sound like the name of a Kerbal. John Doss Kerman.
Yes, exactly.
And Chris, real quick, it sounds like somebody out there has the stream on.
I heard it. I heard it. Yep.
Okay, good deal. All right.
And we're coming up on T-minus 2 minutes again.
Stoke.
Into the business end of the countdown at T-minus 1 minute, we will hopefully hear Falcon 9 go into startup, and which will be an indicator that weather is still within the rules that they can allow a liftoff in. So, hopefully, we're just over a minute and a half now from liftoff.
Y'all, if you're just joining us, this is a Falcon 9.
And as
you
we
can just
approach that
barely see.
90-second mark
Look
here
over to Chris there.
prior to the liftoff of the Falcon 9, again, this is the NROL-108 mission, which is a classified mission for the National Reconnaissance Office. NROL stands for National Reconnaissance Office Launch. It is not the 108th National Reconnaissance Office mission. That is just a placeholder name for clandestine secrecy stuff. But we are now just over a minute away from... Oh no, they stopped at 1:53.
Aha. Yep, and that is on the official SpaceX stream there, y'all.
Scrub.
Looks like a hold.
Or they stopped, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
should
stopped,
not
not
be a
scrub, they
scrub.
just stopped.
So I'm not going to jump to conclusions, but I would probably bet money that this was a weather-related scrub based on Chris G's camera view. Or not scrub, sorry, wrong word, hold. This was a hold in the countdown. The launch window extends all the way till 12 noon. They have lots of time to recycle this if they need to.
And I'm back on real-time comms, guys.
Yeah, I'm
no.
trying to remember, Chris. I don't think we have ever seen... Oh, there goes Fleet Cam doing its other track. I did not turn off yet. But I don't remember if we've actually seen a Falcon 9 recycle and launch. They've attempted, since they've moved the super cold liquid auction, we've seen them attempt to recycle. I don't think they've actually done it and launched. Am I forgetting a launch or something?
No. That actually matches mine perfectly. The last time I remember them trying it was actually the very first Block 5 on the Bangabandhu mission a couple of years ago, where they got to like T-minus 11 minutes or something, had an issue, stopped, and they were trying to recycle but just ran out of time in the day. Yeah, now that's on the Block 5s. There was an early on Falcon, so 2 Falcon 9 missions early on. The very first one, and then a paying customer one, actually lit the engines on the pad, aborted, stopped, and launched later in the same launch window. So they've done it at least twice,
And
but
really
not
quick,
with the
Chris,
Block 5.
We just saw the countdown recycle their T-minus 45 minutes.
Aha.
Okay.
So it looks like they will recycle and do a full detanking and then another propellant loading operation if they're
Gotcha.
able to recycle today.
Gotcha. And of note, they can actually detank the Falcon 9 much quicker than they can load propellants into it, because it's much easier to just use gravity.
It seems like they're trying to manage the temperatures of the propellants. I mean, one of the things that Falcon has to deal with, because it uses those super cryogenic liquids, right? Not just regular cryogenic liquids. They actually have to carefully watch the temperatures of the liquid fuel and oxidizer. So probably what's going on here is they're detanking it to put it back into the farm, and then they'll reload the rocket, so they're not worried about the LOX heating up, even though it's it's not hot out there today. We're not looking at 100 degrees in Florida, but they do have to manage that, we know. So maybe that's the reason for the detank and the 45-minute hold here.
And it definitely could, and yeah, the fact that they're holding it 45 minutes, yeah, is definitely interesting. But yeah, this is all fascinating, because we rarely have long enough launch windows with weather things like this to to have seen them work through this type of issue before, which is really cool to watch.
And I do. So if this would be a first if they launch from this point, I believe, as we were mentioning earlier, I don't think we've ever seen this happen before with the launch. I think Chris, like I said, what Chris just said matches what I recall. So I'm excited to see what happens from here.
All right, so that's
Yeah,
going to
'cause
give us
it'll give
plenty
us.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, because I'm just saying this will give us a lot of really good insight into what the Block 5's turnaround configuration is, because they've never had to do this with the Block 5 before. So yeah, this will be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I should say, they've never had to do this with the Block 5 on launch day. I'm beyond certain they've done this before with the Block 5, just not on launch day.
Right.
And the window went all the way up till noon today, didn't it? The window was 9
Yes.
until noon. And it's an NROL window, so like who even knows?
Right. So it might not actually go all the way till noon. It might end slightly before that, but yes. Of course, it'll be interesting because they could detank for a recycle and then not begin propellant loading again until they see a gap in the weather, especially if that is the reason they called the hold. If weather was forecasted to be good at 9:45, and then as they went through the countdown, weather started to deteriorate and act differently than they were forecasting, they might have proceeded with the countdown to hope that it would clear, and since that it didn't, they might detank and then wait for a new forecast to see when exactly they will be able to try again. But again, no official word on what the exact reason for the hold actually was. We're standing by to hear about that and whether SpaceX will proceed with a recycle attempt.
Michael,
Okay, and
I think Michael, go ahead.
I was gonna say I was listening to what the SpaceX webcast presenter was just saying. So as an update, they are still working to confirm for the webcast what the issue was, which to me sounds like it's probably not weather. If it was weather, I would think they would have that information readily available. So it's possible there was some other sort of technical issue, although they've not said exactly what that is. He also just said they have not confirmed if they are going to make another attempt today.
Good deal.
So
Thanks,
we
Michael.
will stand by to find out. Of course, they have lots of time to make an attempt today if they need to.
So I was going to say, Michael, I had Fleet Cam up there when it started the auto track, it looked like. And I was going to point out that this is where the rocket would be flying if it had launched on time today, because Fleet Cam actually went into an automated mode where Michael had programmed it to track the trajectory of the rocket given the liftoff time and the known trajectories of things like, or the known trajectories, the expected trajectories of launches like this. And you saw Fleet Cam start to move there through sort of the tilt as the rocket would have been taking off at what would have been T-0, but of course that did not happen. The rocket was not going anywhere, and Fleet Cam didn't know any better. It was just like, all right, there we go, let's go. So another cool thing we've been working on here is that programmatic tracking from the robotic cameras, where Michael just feeds it some data and then it just goes based on the T-0 and what we think the trajectory is. Fleet Cam is in startup. Nice, I like it. But we're continuing to stand by, like Michael just said. We saw the SpaceX webcast go through go recycle back down to 45 minutes. It was not 45 seconds, it was 45 minutes that they set that to. And then the SpaceX webcast saying that they did not have the information on exactly what caused the hold or whether or not they would try. But they did reset that clock to 45 minutes, and we are certainly going to stand by here at a dreary day down at Cape Canaveral, as you can see on both cameras, while we wait to see what SpaceX is going to do.
Yes, indeed. I've escaped to the nice warmth of my car, since I don't have to stand in the misting rain anymore.
All right. Yeah, we can hear you fine now, Chris. You've
Perfect.
retreated to the Tesla, huh?
Yes, I have. I've retweeted. I've retreated to the on-brand vehicle. Yes.
The on-brand vehicle. We did get some super chats that come through. Thomas, you want me to grab some super chats real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Calypto has a question here. Appreciate the $9.99 and says, did you guys notice if the heat tiles on SN8 survived the flight? Oh, wow. SN8 and the heat tiles, the TPS surviving the flight. Pre-run, obviously. From what I can tell, they did, which is awesome. Did we get any photos or video of the TPS on Starship after or right before the landing?
Oh, right before the landing? I don't think we did, no.
I think
Not
they were on
before
the
the
far
landing, at least.
side. Yeah, I'm gonna look at our perspectives real quick, but I think that the underside of Starship was away from Mary's camera whenever it landed, so I don't know that we actually had video of that. I'll look though. Interesting question, Calypto. Let me go back and look at that, and we'll come back around to it. And I'm gonna keep on going with some other questions here. Jim Please says, do you know why the feed from YouTube to Roku is blurry, but your feed to a browser is clean? Jim, I can try to help you with that. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thomas, do you know?
Well, yeah, I do know that sometimes if you're viewing it from like a TV, like a Roku or something like that, sometimes it defaults to a really low resolution, and you have to like go into your settings on the TV, like in your YouTube app or whatever, to actually select, hey, can I have like the HD feed, please? Sometimes I know you have to do that, so I bet that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I know sometimes people come through the stream and they're like, oh my gosh, the text is blurry. What the heck? Geez, this channel is terrible. And we're like, yeah, you're
But,
viewing.
like, we push
at
HD
160?
streams, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Like, check your little gear there and make sure that it's not set to 160p, because our text should not be blurry on your screen. If the text is blurry, that means that your output that you're getting is set to a lower resolution. So you should be getting a full 1080p 60 FPS quality if you use that little gear there. But maybe the Roku is the same sort of thing, just like Thomas was saying.
Right.
But Jim, hope that helps you out. Tyson Baumgarten is a new member. Welcome to the NASASpaceflight family. Tyson, we appreciate the support. Richard Hall as well, coming through with a membership, getting some of those membership perks. David Gerben, $4.99. Appreciate the support, David. Thank you. Grant Hugstead, coming in from Australia with a couple Australian bucks. Thank you for the support. And there's another one with no message. Grant just said hi, and the first one did another $2. That was just the $2. Arthur Mohamedov says, as a programmer, do launch providers distinguish between T-0 and T+0 for processing or symbolism reasons? I mean, we know.
can answer this.
Yeah, go
I can
ahead.
answer this.
Go ahead.
They simply remove the negative and the plus. It's not T-0 or T+0, it's T0. So you get T-2, T-1, T0, T+1, T+2.
So do we know, is that just like a thing that's displayed or said out loud, or does the programming actually account for that? Like, negative time is sort of a weird thing in programming, right?
So the way I understand it, it works. It's all based on mission elapsed time. So there's your pre-launch countdown script that switches over to your flight script at T0, and then the T0 time is then read in mission elapsed time, or MET, by the computer. And if you remember, a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, that's what got Starliner in trouble. When it reached down into the Atlas V's computer, it didn't ask for the mission elapsed time. It grabbed a different time from that rocket, and that's what created the 11-hour mismatch of where Starliner thought it was versus where it actually was, is because it didn't grab the mission elapsed time, it grabbed another time.
Gotcha. So there are multiple clocks that have to work in sync, and I imagine there's like a master clock somewhere, but at some point you have to have a handoff where the rocket is running its own clock. I wonder if that's how it works, right? But we know there are multiple clocks involved with tracking the launch, and there's probably handoffs.
Yeah, so so SpaceX hasn't really talked about the Falcon 9, but I can give you an idea based on another rocket. And if you're playing NSF Bingo, you know what rocket that is. It's going to be similar across the vehicles. Okay, so the shuttle had a series of redundant flight computers, and all rockets have redundant flight computers and systems, right? In case one fails, you don't want that to be your single point failure, right? You want another one to be able to take over right away. So the way the shuttle used to do this is when the main engine's lit on the launch pad, it was in countdown operations, and there were different modes of the countdown. And when they started their terminal count at T-9 minutes and counted down to T0, T-minus 6.6 seconds, all the engine ignition sequence would start, and at T-minus 3 seconds, when the onboard computers verified the health of the three main engines, the fifth of the 5 flight computers would transition to flight mode for a 3 second early. So if the vehicle aborted on the pad after that, they had to manually stop the backup flight computer because it thought it was in the air. and would trigger the separation sequence of the solid rocket boosters if it wasn't shut down. But the reason they moded it over to launch mode 3 seconds early was because the other 4 computers were still in control of the countdown. The 5th one was the backup and not in control. So the 4 that were in control stayed in countdown mode until literally the moment of T0, when they had to instantly transition to flight mode. And if any single one of them didn't switch over, the backup flight computer was there and taking over and already in launch mode, basically. And that's how they do it, to ensure that the countdown continues, and that when you lift off, if you have a glitch in your primary computer, you've got others to take over at a moment's notice.
Gotcha. So again, y'all, not information specifically on the Falcon 9 there, but just sort of the way things worked with shuttle. And like Chris said, SpaceX hasn't told us exactly how that works, but a lot of different ways that you need to keep track, because as we all know, making sure that the rocket knows exactly what time it is and is doing things at the exact right time is very important for getting to space. So definitely something they spend a good amount of time making sure is ready to go. I'm going to grab a couple more super chats here. It says Anonymous Super. Nice. It says, looks pretty overcast for viewing right now, though. It is pretty overcast. I don't know if we got an official update from the SpaceX stream. Michael, did we hear what the deal with that was?
Yes, still listening. 1 second.
Okay. Seeing if we get this official update from SpaceX on what's going on. Are they going to attempt to recycle or not?
So it sounds like the vehicle and the payload are healthy. They are looking into a potential recycle, but have not determined the time yet. So they are looking into a potential recycle.
Okay, so as far as we know, still another 2 hours remaining in the window. The window was supposed to go up until noon. It was an NRO window, which means... I'll explain that really quickly. Like, what do you mean? The window's either the window or it's not. Sometimes NRO gives us sort of... air quotes, I'm doing air quotes if you can see me here, windows, right? And if they told you exactly when the window opened and closed, you could use that information to make some guesses about where the satellite's going, right? The trajectory and all that sort of stuff. So a lot of times they don't tell us in the payload, how much it weighs, that sort of thing. You can make some guesses based on knowing exactly what the window is. So sometimes NRO sort of gives us a window, and it's not really the window. It's just sort of kind of the window, but it's not the exact information to sort of hide some of those details that you may be able to infer about the payload, about the trajectory, about the mass of the payload, that sort of stuff, given the launch window that the Falcon 9, with its known performance, can lift X amount of mass to X type of orbit, yada, yada, yada. Right? So that's what we're talking about when we say the window goes till noon, but it may not really be noon.
It's like someone at the NRO really needs to, like, for their next launch, have the Dr. Evil meme that goes window with the air quotes.
With the air quotes. I like it. The window today is... Anyways, let's see. John M. Bevel says, not blurry anymore, thanks. So it looks like the Roku or browser might have got fixed there. John, happy to help. One of the many services we provide. Let's see here. Oh, and some people saying you can see some heat tiles on SN8 on the SpaceX landing pad shot. Mike Michaelo there says you can see it on the SpaceX shot. I looked at ours and it was on the far side. When it's doing the belly flop, you can see a little bit of a darker area on Mary's footage that sort of looked like the heat tiles, but no real detail on that. But people saying check the landing video from SpaceX and you can see the heat tiles there. So thanks for looking that up there for us. Here's Arthur again. Oh, this is another question from Arthur Makhamadov saying, how soon before launch can SpaceX reschedule Starlings? Can they go, well, we decided to go for it in a week? So, do y'all understand the question there?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're asking how quickly, like how far in advance do they need to decide to schedule a Starlink launch? So that would be limited by how quickly they can encapsulate a stack of Starlink satellites, get it mated to a Falcon 9, and roll it out and launch it. Which I guess if they have all the satellites ready, it might be about a week as far as payload encapsulation, mating, rollout, and launch. Chris, what do you think?
It can be really, really quick if they had it, because they've got so many Starlings just waiting.
Right.
And it's not the Starlings that are the driving force of when those missions launch. Off the top of my head, they have, I would, and based on when we get advisories as media telling us accreditation is open, and then a big indicator as to how quickly this mission came together is whether or not they allow foreign nationals or non-US citizens to apply for media, because foreign nationals have to give the Kennedy Space Center and the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station about anywhere between 14 and 30 days notice before coming on base and being badged. So we know one time a Starling mission went from the Cape side, and we got an email saying this is going to happen this month within a couple of weeks, and foreign nationals are not allowed to apply because they've missed the deadline already. So it would appear they've integrated at least one Starlink in less than a month. But again, that was kind of a special case where like a paying customer mission slipped, and a window in their manifest just sort of opened up, which is what they look for. And they try to fill those gaps with Starlink missions. So, little hard to say, but they could definitely do it quickly. A week might be a bit much because of range support and approval and everything that you need to do in terms of integration of the vehicle and the launch pad, but it's not a multi-month process. That much is for certain.
Right.
Gotcha. Another good question, y'all. Sometimes we have to sort of take a guess at some of the questions. We don't always have the official word from SpaceX. If it's something that's been officially released, we'll certainly relay that to you. But sometimes it's well, here's sort of what we think about that, but we may not always have the official answer. Still, good questions. We don't shy away from stuff like that. We'll always try to make sure you understand when we're sort of guessing at something or when we're repeating something that there's an official source on. And hey, really quickly, if you are watching our stream from Jetty Park today, what's going on? Greetings from the NASA Spaceflight team. I've got a friend over there who told me that there are quite a few people at Jetty Park who have our stream up and are listening to the commentary while they wait to see exactly what's going on with this launch. So if you're hearing us from Jetty Park, greetings, and stay warm out there, I think.
And I really hope, since you're braving this mist, I don't know what else to call it. I still don't know if it's raining or if it's a cloud or what. But my biggest point is I hope you are rewarded and you actually get to see it, not just hear it today. Although I have personally found that sometimes fog and moisture can actually really help to amplify sound. So this could be really cool from a sound perspective, especially with launch and landing and the triple sonic booms. We just might not see anything, but it might still sound cool.
It might, because I don't know the exact physics on it, Chris. I would have to be guessing based on a admittedly incomplete knowledge of the physics. But it seems like when you've got a little bit more mass in the air, like you have the moisture and it's super humid or it's foggy or something like that, sometimes it makes some of the sounds almost, like you said, get amplified, or they carry a little bit better. You would think logically it would like dampen it. Oh, there's extra stuff, but maybe it's the extra mass of the water actually helps transmit the sound better. And you're absolutely right. The launches sound different on a day like today than a day when it's nice and perfectly clear, right?
Yes.
And indeed, and honestly, what I found is the duo that really does it for sound amplification is cooler temperatures, which check, it's 18 degrees C outside right now, and moisture, humidity in the atmosphere. So like it is primed to be a sound bonanza today.
Yeah. Thomas, what were you saying?
I was just saying, think about it this way. Have you ever heard sound underwater, like in a swimming pool or something?
Yes.
You know how sound carries so much better through that than through air, and so much quicker? It's the water in the air actually allows the sound to carry faster and more strongly, if that makes sense.
I mean, it does make sense. It's one of those things where I'm like, from a common sense perspective, I think I get it, but then some physicist jumps in and says, actually, it does,
Well, because it's really cool, because it's the way sound, what you were saying, Thomas, right? The way sound travels through water is completely counterintuitive to how objects move through water, right? Where there's massive resistance and it slows you down. But it's a wonderful medium for sound transportation. And oceanographers would tell you too. We put these buoys with microphones on them in the ocean, and I mean, we can hear things hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away, like whale songs, hundreds of kilometers away, because they travel so well through water.
Especially the lower frequencies, I think, right? Like different frequencies travel differently, but
And
I think that's a really
update from SpaceX. They just tweeted, Falcon 9 auto abort called at T-minus 1 minute and 53 seconds due to a second stage sensor reading. Today's launch window closes at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, so they did not give a new T0 yet. And the SpaceX presenter keeps repeating the same statement, basically, that they are still looking into if they can recycle. So, second stage sensor issue was the cause of the hold, but we still do not have a new T0 or a word that they will even try to recycle today.
That's interesting. The part of the rocket that's not being reflown is the one that has the issue here.
Right.
Correct.
So y'all, again, we're still live. We're going to continue watching. It's a 3-hour window today. We're only an hour and 8 minutes into that 3-hour window. SpaceX just reaffirming that on Twitter. So we still have just under 2 hours to get this bird in the air, or at least in the mist. And SpaceX is looking like there's actually some pretty significant venting or condensation coming off the side I can see there right now. But SpaceX still figuring out exactly what they're going to do based on that anomalous sensor reading on the second stage was what they just relayed to us.
And you can actually, I think on the SpaceX camera right now, you can actually see that the height of the venting is decreasing. So not the venting, but the condensation coming off the rocket is decreasing. So that's an indication that they are detanking as you would expect them to be right now. Again, because of the propellant, because of Falcon 9's super cold propellant, when the vehicle has been sitting out this long, they have to fully detank and then put fresh propellant in before they're able to launch again. But it is also interesting to note that that was an auto abort. So Falcon 9 is a very autonomous launch countdown system, or whatever you want to call it. So lots of computers looking over the status of the health of the vehicle, and a computer saw something wrong and automatically aborted the countdown. That was not a human manually checking that something is wrong and stopping the countdown. Most of Falcon 9 is monitored automatically.
And what's even more interesting about that is it was an automated abort by Falcon 9, but Falcon 9 was not in control of the countdown at that point. It was still 52 seconds away from the actual rocket taking control, but it still registered a problem and said, whoa, 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 stop. Which is good.
Yeah. So I got a question here that came through chat from Thomas Rawson that says, NASA Spaceflight, hi from Kansas. Me and my teacher and classmate have a question. They want to know why the mission's called NROL-108 for the Falcon 9 rocket. And they actually said please and thank you, unlike most people who ask questions. So, Thomas, thank you so much for the question. And then Thomas, also in the studio, can we give a rundown real quick on why it's NROL-108 and why it's a Falcon 9 rocket?
Sure. So we did touch on why the numbering for NRO missions is how it is, and it's kind of not in the order that they launch in. It's probably numbered based on when the mission is authorized or planned, not in the order that it actually flies. But NROL stands for National Reconnaissance Office Launch, so that is what the preface for that mission comes from, and then the numbering comes from when the mission is sort of authorized for flight, not when it actually launches. And then it's launching on a Falcon 9 based on a variety of factors. Of course, it has to be able to launch at a vehicle that can get it to the orbit and get it to the orbit that it's going to based on how heavy the payload actually is. So that helps narrow down which vehicle it can launch on. Of course, it has to be able to fit within the payload fairing. So if it's a really big satellite, like the most recent NROL-44 mission that launched on a Delta IV Heavy, that has a nice big payload fairing. So if the satellite is very large physically, that can be a factor as to which rocket it launches on. And then, of course, it's just a matter of what rockets are available. This mission was sort of procured on a very quick turnaround basis. This was a launch that was not announced very far in advance, so it was likely they went to SpaceX and said, can you launch this payload very quickly? And SpaceX said yes, so that was likely a result of how quickly they needed this payload into orbit. So that's another factor as to why they chose Falcon 9 for this flight as well.
Good deal. So good question there, Thomas. Good answer, Thomas. Across the board. So really quickly, this is just something that popped into my head. Is the Falcon 9 actually named after like the Millennium Falcon, or did Elon just make that name up? Is it just
I do
something I heard
believe
somewhere?
that Falcon 9 was named after the Millennium Falcon. Right, Chris? I believe we know that.
Yep, that's totally what it was named after, yes.
And then it's the Falcon 9 because it's got 9 engines on the bottom.
Correct.
So it's like the Millennium Falcon and it's got 9 engines on the bottom.
Because the original idea, right, is you had the Falcon 1, and then they upgraded to the Falcon 9, and then the Falcon Heavy, and originally Starship was Big Falcon Rocket, BFR,
Right.
Yes.
Until they changed its name to Starship.
Gotcha. I mean, they said Falcon Heavy. I wonder why they didn't call it the Falcon 27. That sounds like
It's a mouthful.
marathon you run when you go to college or something. It's like, oh yeah, I participated in the Falcon 27 this weekend.
Yeah,
anyways.
if I had to guess, it's probably just because the nomenclature when you start bolting the same first stage together to get a triple core vehicle, the nomenclature is just to call that the heavy version
right.
of that vehicle. And if I had to guess, they just went with heavy instead of having to constantly explain to the U.S. government and customers what a Falcon 27 was.
The Falcon 9x3. Like, wait, what?
Right. Sorry, that would be amazing.
I'm going to grab a couple more super chats here real quick as we continue in this hold. Coming up on an hour and 45 minutes remaining in the window. Information we saw from SpaceX was that an update should be coming. It was an auto abort by the second stage, the vehicle reporting something up with the second stage, and so calling its own abort, and SpaceX is having a look at that. A lot of times what will happen here is a human can look at the numbers and say, okay, yeah, this sensor, we actually have 3 copies of the same sensor all reading the same number, and 2 sensors say this, but one sensor doesn't agree, and we're going to go ahead and accept that one sensor is just not right because the other 2 we think they're fine. That may be something that's going on as SpaceX reviews this. Not specifically, that's not what SpaceX has said, but they are sort of doing a human review of why the auto abort was called. Is this something they need to get into the rocket and turn a wrench on to make sure that it's good to go, or is it just something where they have some other data they may use to say, all right, yeah, the rocket tripped, but we're looking at this and this other data says everything's good to go, let's recycle and go for it. We're waiting for SpaceX to tell us what's going on there.
Indeed does, and the only part that I would add to that is
Sure.
Depending on what sensor it was, which they didn't say. Sometimes your launch commit criteria, the things that you say, okay, this is what we put on the vehicle, but what of that has to be working perfectly for us to lift off? And sometimes if you have systems where you've got 4 sensors, you would like all 4 to be working, but your launch commit criteria says you're fine with 3. And then other times your launch commit criteria is going to say, nope, you need all 4 of those. But there's always this thing in rocket flight called the good sense rule, and it applies both technologically and meteorologically. So you could wind up in a situation, right, where you technically meet all of the weather requirements to be good to launch. But the good sense rule says, yeah, but even if we technically meet them, we're right at the line of 7 of them being bad. Good sense tells you not to chance that, right?
Gotcha.
Even if you might and likewise, the good sense rule might tell you, well, we're technically in violation of this because there's a thunderstorm within 10 nautical miles of the launch pad. I hate nautical miles, but anyway, 10 nautical miles of the launch pad. But it's to the north of us, and it's moving north. It will be out of that 10 nautical mile zone by the time we hit T0. The good sense rule in that case tells you proceed, even though you're in technical violation. And the same applies on the technical side of the vehicle, right?
Gotcha.
You could have a launch commit criteria that says you need all 4, but they go look at it on the day and they're like, nah, we're actually fine with 3. And enough people in management agree to that, and up off the pad you go after a discussion.
That's the same sort of thing we've talked about with the aircraft exclusion zones as well. Like, technically, you can launch if there's an aircraft in the exclusion zone as long as it's leaving the exclusion zone. So it's flying out. It's not going to magically teleport over the rocket at the last second, but there could be a plane in the exclusion zone, and as long as it's on the right path to leave the exclusion zone by launch, you can still continue to go forward. Like you said, that's part of the good sense you get a human involved there and just make a good decision.
Yes, and I'm actually so happy you talked about the exclusion zones because I want to talk about them for just a little second. I know we've got more questions.
Sure.
But I was floored at first when I learned this late last year when we were doing a tour, or actually it was earlier this year when we were doing a tour of the Morel Operations Center on the Cape side, where all of the personnel from the range that we keep talking about, right? The range. Well, that's the building that they operate from on the Cape. And we got a tour of it, and we were talking to people, and we were specifically talking to the people who monitor and support the exclusion zones. And they said something that was shocking to me, that there was not a launch that any of them could remember, and some of them had been there for decades, where they were not in technical violation of the range when the liftoff occurred. There's always a violation of the range every single time, whether it's sea, land, or air. And every single time you see a launch, there's usually something violating that range. They're just in communication with it, and they know they're headed out and that they're not in danger, because we make our exclusion zones far larger than they actually have to be.
Right.
To protect against that, to protect people, but also to protect against that. So yeah, usually every time you see something launch, there's something actually violating the range here in Florida. They're just talking to it, and they know it's not a problem.
It's a controlled violation, not like, oh, there's something out there and we can't talk to it, we have no communication with it. You have the information about what's going on out there. So that's a really cool thing to think about there. Again, the rockets are highly automated, but we do have people in there. Go ahead, Michael.
Elon has tweeted, pressure is slightly high in upper stage liquid oxygen tank, review underway. So
there we go.
High pressure in the liquid oxygen tank on stage 2 was the issue. Now the question is, normally that's not something you would at all want to be launching with. That sounds like it could be serious, but when you have sensor readings, a lot of times when it's a anomalous sensor reading, it turns out that the actual vehicle is fine, but the sensor is reporting false data. That is something that happens quite a lot, especially when you have thousands of sensors on the launch vehicle. So it could be that it's just a bad sensor that's spitting out incorrect data. So if they can rule that that's the case, they may be able to launch today. But if it's actually a high pressure in the second stage that occurred, I would be shocked if they launched today.
Right.
Same, Michael. Yeah, that's definitely something, like you said, you don't want to leave the pad with higher pressure, because, yeah, that's not good. We've seen what happens with that with Starship. When things get...
Sounds like we might have lost Chris for just a second there. Just a little temporary hiccup, it looks like. Chris, if you can hear me, we did drop your audio as you were saying that sentence. Yeah, folks, we'll work to get Chris back. It does look like we dropped Chris's audio for just a second. I'm going to keep running some super chats while we work on that. And Michael, if you could put that in text just to make sure that Chris is aware we dropped. Andrew Donald says, hi from Melbourne, Australia. Do we have any reason for any idea of the reason for the hold? We do now, Andrew. I think you might have asked that before we knew, but now we can report via SpaceX that there was an issue. It was an auto abort. There was an issue with a sensor on the upper stage, the second stage of the Falcon 9. And Elon saying that it was a high LOX pressure, something that was a little bit out of family there, and that is why the rocket said no go itself. But SpaceX still trying to figure out if they will recycle this. Is this something they can go with or not? Like Michael was saying, if it isn't actually a high, or if it's actually a high pressure, it's not just an anomalous sensor, and maybe there's multiple sensors all reporting, yep, that pressure is high. It may not be going today, but we're waiting for the official word from SpaceX on that. Thanks for the Australian dollars and the good question. Let's see here. Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo coming through with $20 saying, for the SN8 flight coverage, I was watching on Roku and couldn't send that day. Love you guys. Scooby, thank you so much for the $20. That is an awful lot of Scooby snacks we can get, and we appreciate the support there. $20. There's another, this one says Anonymous Super again. Appreciate the support there, Anonymous Super. Future Martian, Future Martian saying the NRO had an issue with their fog machine. Maybe that's why the launch was scrubbed, because we could see the rocket. Future Martian always coming through with the super chats. We appreciate the continued, frequent, and significant support. Thank you so much for everything you do for us. Let's see here. Arthur comes back through and says the vehicle and payload are perfectly healthy, therefore second stage sensor died and we scrubbed for the day. Of course, that's Arthur's guess there, I think, because everything else was good to go, so we had something that caused it not to go. That's just the way it goes with rocket flights. Again, not official information. We're still standing by on SpaceX's official call on that, but it may vary. We'll see which way it goes. Let's leave it at that.
And of course, the interesting thing about the timing of that is that would have been after the tanks partially pressurized for strong back retract, but prior to the actual pressurization to flight levels, which begins at the T-1 minute mark. So,
all right. And hey, Chris, I saw your message. We're go for the battery swap you need to do with the camera. We will hop over to the fleet cam.
okay, cool. I
Really
will
quickly.
do that in 15 seconds.
Yep, you're good to go. Fleet cam's going to sort of pan around. That's pad
Yeah,
40
sorry.
it was looking at.
Why we were looking at pad 40 is that, as you can see on Chris's cam that we were just on, the fog has pulled away, and earlier I was unable to focus fleet cam manually because we could not see anything on the horizon, but with that fog clearing, I was using the lightning masts on pad 40 to focus fleet cam manually for launch. That when the bright rocket launches, sometimes it can cause the autofocus to go out of whack, so you always want to have your cameras on manual focus for a rocket launch. That's what I was doing there, but I'm not sure we're going to see much from fleet cam today of the actual launch, given this cloud cover, but you can still see that weather, and hopefully, fingers crossed, if it launches today, we might be able to get some of the landing. The rocket should come down, if we pan to the right, behind this tall grain silo. So that's kind of a bummer from fleet cam, but we might get to see a couple seconds of the rocket coming through the clouds just above this grain silo before it goes behind it.
Yeah, I mean, again, we installed the fleet cam so that we could watch boosters come in and out of port, not so that we could watch RTLS raves. So we'll see what we're able to see on fleet cam, if anything, today, if we get the launch.
Indeed. Battery swap is complete, Das. You are go to come back onto my camera.
All right, there you go. And yep, the grass is waving, so that video feed is live. It's highly complicated the way I do that. I just look at usually grass or leaves or something like that. Smoke and clouds can work, just trying to make sure we do have the live video feed, and we do.
It's a very polite it's very polite grass that we have here. It likes to wave and say hello.
I appreciate the fact that it's waving at me so I can tell that it's live. I'm still 30 minutes behind in the super chat, so let me get a couple more caught up. And Philip Moyer, 30 minutes ago, saying, possibly dumb question, but are they installing Raptors in the high bay, or do they install the engines on the pad? So this is talking about Starship down at Boca Chica. We've seen both, haven't we?
We have, though, I mean, current operations with Starship SN9 being the newest vehicle, they did install the Raptor engines in the high bay, so it sounds like going forward they will do it that way so they can roll out a fully assembled vehicle, which makes more sense in the long term than rolling it out in pieces and installing them at the pad. Right now they are actually now installing them in the high bay.
Gotcha. Do you think that may talk something about their confidence level with the cryo test? Because previously we had seen tests done on the tankage without the Raptors, so that if something went on, like we had an anomaly where we had a rupture or something like that, you didn't lose 3 really expensive Raptors. Do you think we're going to keep seeing those cryo tests? Do you think they're just ready to, they say, okay, we've tested this a lot, we're pretty confident in these? What do you think is going to happen with that?
Yeah, and that's a good point. Obviously, the more tests they do and the more vehicles they run through testing, the more data they'll have and the more comfortable they'll feel with that countdown sort of process as far as cryo loading and things like that. So yeah, I think it would say that they're more confident that, cryo tests won't produce any significant issues. They definitely don't want to risk those nice expensive Raptor engines, so they wouldn't be installing them ahead of that if they weren't confident that pre-flight testing would go smoothly, or at least not produce any major issues. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Let me grab a couple more here. Here's one from Tom Hunter. Tom was asking, what's the next scheduled SpaceX flight after this one? And what's the payload? We're going all the way into January, aren't we?
Right, it is into January now, but I do believe the next payload still should be the Turksat 5A communication satellite. That was kind of tentatively scheduled for the end of the month and has now slipped into January, but that should still be the next launch. Turksat 5A is a geostationary communications satellite, and that will launch on a Falcon 9 rocket, a flight-proven Falcon 9 rocket, and I do not know. It'll probably launch from Pad 40, simply because this one's going from 39A. Although they could always change it up depending on when other launches are scheduled and things like that. But that should be the next mission, and that should be in early January at some point.
Good deal. All right, again, y'all, lots of questions. I'm going to see if I can grab a couple more super chats just to get us caught up. Let's see here. Here's one from Donald Clark, and Donald says, as an old guy who remembers Glenn, Gemini, and the moon landing, happy you share the ability of humans to leave the Earth and send rockets forth. So Donald Clark, thank you for the kind words. Thank you for the support, and thanks for being a member of the community here, hopping in and sharing the streams with us. We're absolutely ecstatic that we have the ability to share these sorts of events with people and talk with people about what's going on and just sort of share the experience. So thank you so much for helping us make that happen. Clint Thompson is a member joining the NASA Spaceflight YouTube membership here. Clint, we appreciate the support. Laurie Wilson as well, $4.99. Appreciate you there, Laurie. Here's Gerard McDonald saying, awesome coverage, guys. It's always a pleasure tuning in. Well, we are happy that you are tuning in and sharing this with us today, Gerard. Thank you so much for joining us. And then Daniel Gagnon is what I'm going to go with there from Canada, saying, is there a risk of excessive ice buildup before launch with the extended window in high humidity? Have we ever heard anything like that? Like, could it ice over? Does the ice just fall off when the rocket launches and it's not that big of a deal, Thomas?
Yeah, usually the ice just kind of falls off when it launches, and it's not really a big deal. They do take that into account, any sort of extra weight on the outside. It's not enough to really significantly affect the rocket in any way, and especially because they are detanking the vehicle and then refilling it from scratch. That ice should melt off or fall off, and it shouldn't be a huge issue with the extended hold.
Gotcha. All right, and that gets us up to most of the super chats. I'm going to keep a couple in the queue for the future. But again, y'all, we're NASA Spaceflight. We are standing by for official word on SpaceX on the fate of the launch today. Falcon 9 is out there at Cape Canaveral. We saw him go all the way up through fueling, got down to T-minus not much, a minute something, minute 45 or something like that, 43 or something, wasn't it? I think so.
It was 1 minute 53 seconds. And can that be a shirt, Doss? They got down to T-minus something?
T-minus something. Hold it, T-minus something. We have lots of shirt ideas.
Or whatever you said, I laughed. That was a really good way to describe it. They got down to not that far.
Not that far. That's me saying, I don't remember the exact time, but I'm going to say something that says I kind of know what I'm talking about, even if I don't remember the exact number, and then I'll toss it into the air so y'all can correct me. I do that a lot.
As a reminder, the launch window closes at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, so they still have another 45 minutes before they would have to resume the countdown from the T-minus 45-minute position, as there are about 90 minutes remaining in the launch window.
Gotcha. And SpaceX, if I'm not mistaken, the SpaceX stream is still going, which is a good sign that they haven't called it off.
Right.
You'd think that if they were a no-go, they would come on the stream and say, all right, we're a no-go. We're not going to sit here in front of these cameras anymore. So we're continuing to stand by for that official status update from SpaceX. Let's go around the horn really quickly, just to introduce the team one more time. I know a lot of the times we are sort of disembodied voices talking over whatever's happening. And yeah, okay, I'm not sure what that echo was there for a second, but we're all good. I'm John Galloway with NASA Spaceflight, back here in the studio. You may know me as K-Space Academy, or DOS, if you ever watched my Twitch stream. And also out in the field today, we've got Chris Gebhardt, Assistant Managing Editor for NASA Spaceflight. Chris, I think.
Yo.
There he is. All right. So that is the voice of Chris. Say hi one more time, real quick, Chris.
There you go. I was like, oh, I don't know what else to say. Yes, hello everyone. Greetings wherever you are from around the world.
I'll prompt you for something so they can hear the sound of your voice. That's Chris. He's actually out there crewing the camera at the Cape. Always appreciate him rolling out, come rain or not really snow very often down in Florida, but anyways, he gets the camera out so we can see the streams. That is what it is. Thomas Burghardt.
We sent a low pressure center of snow all the way up to New England and Canada, so we don't get snow, but we send it to others.
You send it to other people. Back at the studio, we've got Thomas Burghardt as well. Thomas, check in for us.
Hey, how's everyone doing? And yes, Chris, you did send us some snow. We appreciate that.
We just got cold weather here in Charlotte. It's just been drizzly and lousy the last couple of days. Just you want to just curl up and go to sleep all day. But that's Thomas, the voice of Thomas there. And then also every now and then you'll hear Michael Baylor hop in with some official announcements from SpaceX and stuff like that. Michael, you there?
Yes, I am. We were kind of talking about this in our back channel. I'm actually hoping for a scrub today because we get a Falcon 9 return to launch site landing only about once or twice a year out of Florida these days. So when it happens, I want to be able to see it. And if it were to launch today, we would not see much of that landing, unfortunately.
Yeah, that is correct. You may see the Falcon 9 come thump out of the clouds right before it disappears behind the trees. So we want the rocket to go whenever it can. Like, we want the payload to get up there, but if it had to go till it was a better view for us, I mean, you know.
Yeah, because it is super impressive without clouds, because you get such a sense of how quickly that rocket is falling to the ground. To the point where, like, on the streams, right, when you see it, right, it's coming down, and it lights its engine and then it touches down. But when you're actually watching it on the ground, it's falling, and you start to go, oh, please reignite. And right when you think it's not going to, boom, that's when the engine kicks in.
Yep.
It's really cool to see.
I'll say I love the views from the rocket itself, right? Where you have a camera strapped to the side of the rocket, but the views from the rocket sometimes don't really give you the context of how fast it's coming down when it's lighting the engines. Like, sure, you can see it, but if you get a little bit of context, you can see the foreground, you can see the rocket off in the distance falling out of the sky. That almost gives you a little bit better appreciation for exactly what's going on instead of being in the driver's seat there. So
it really does. It really does. And you know, when they do the entry burn, so not the landing burn, but the middle burn, the entry burn to slow down in the atmosphere.
Yep.
I mean, on the cameras, right? I mean, that looks like it's way out to sea still,
yep.
and over the ocean. And it isn't until you actually see it from either the Cape grounds or Jetty Park or Playa Linda Beach that you realize how incredibly overhead that thing is. I mean, you are literally almost looking directly up when it starts that entry burn. It's incredible when they come back.
It really is a sight to see. So, again, I have to say that I would like the rocket to safely launch and successfully get its payload at whatever's best for the rocket. But if it happens to be clear tomorrow and that's when it goes, I'm not going to complain.
Right.
As we were saying in the back channel, or as I said in the back channel to Michael, yeah, I definitely would not mind or complain coming back tomorrow if it's clear. But again, if they can get it taken care of and we can launch safely today, that's the most important thing, despite what we want to see.
Yeah, it's so many begrudging caveats there, I guess we could say. It's like, okay, fine, if it has to launch today. Again, y'all, we're continuing to stand by. We're awaiting official word from SpaceX on exactly what's going on. We may have that shortly here on an update as to what's happening exactly. It was a problem with the second stage. Rocket decided it didn't like it. It was an auto abort where the rocket said, hey, whoa, I'm not going, something's up. Y'all need to check this. And they did have 3 hours in the window, just under 2.5 or 1.5 hours actually remaining in the window. They do have to start refueling the rocket at a certain time in order to hit the end of that window there. So we're continuing to stand by and see what the official word from SpaceX is.
I mean, I'll say this because I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, right? Well, like, if they were really able to go, wouldn't they kind of know that right now? and it's a little tricky, right? Because without them saying exactly what the sensor is, this could be something, right? Like we were talking a little bit earlier. Like, are we trying to figure out which sensor is faulty? But especially with what SpaceX did say that it was or what Elon said that it was an overpressurization reading in the first stage. I mean, I personally wouldn't be surprised if they scrubbed, even if it's just out of an abundance of caution, just to stop and really understand it. But it's also possible that, you know, they're looking at everything and they'll get there. They'll get to a degree of confidence today. But just trying to set the tone that given what Elon has said this is, I don't think anyone should be surprised if this does end up with them delaying. Of course, right now, we're just holding it T-minus 45 minutes and waiting for the answer about whether or not we'll continue today or not. But, you know, just for some context there.
Good deal. All right. So SpaceX just continuing to say that they're continuing to review what's going on, and we don't have an official update. Basically just saying, please stand by. And we're going to continue not just standing by, but answering some questions and stuff like that. So let's see if we can find some more good questions. So here's another question from Thomas Rawson. This is from a little bit ago, but it's asking about the cancellations here. Will the flight get canceled due to bad weather? Will it be rescheduled to another day when the weather's better? Thomas, it wasn't due to bad weather today. It was due to... Hey, Chris, can you check your camera because that bird is hovering? We may need you to...
Oh, the bird is hovering? Yes, let me put my mask on and go back out. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. There's a bird that seems to have learned some anti-gravity techniques there, and I'm wondering if that feed is live.
We'll go check.
It's a Discord PG problem. I was having the same issue, but yeah.
Okay.
Output looks fine to me.
All right.
Okay,
yeah.
So we're okay. It's pushing to YouTube. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we're okay.
Okay.
We're okay.
Okay,
All right.
good.
I'll try to resolve that issue there on that.
Having visual of the vehicle through a certain point in the ascent by different tracking assets, in those that are airborne. So it's not a problem for Falcon 9 to launch through fog. We've seen that happen in Vandenberg. We've actually seen it happen here in Florida with the CRS-10 mission in 2017, which launched into cloud cover. We could only see it for about 10 seconds as it left the pad. And these low cloud covers, in fact, the lightning protection system at 39B, I cannot see the top of those towers, and I can just kind of see the top of the vehicle assembly building. But those low fog and cloud decks are not problems for the booster coming back as well. And it was actually misting, raining here at the press site and at all of our gear when they were going to launch from 39A. So the weather looks terrible, but it's actually not, because it's just really low clouds. But that's it. So weather's not as bad as it looks.
Good deal. And again, y'all, we're continuing to stand by. There we go. Yep, we were working on the audio there. We're having a Discord issue, and we had to actually... Discord was actually saying it was disconnected for a second, so we've been trying to work on that. Stand by, y'all. Hang on one second. It looks like it may be coming and going. You should be getting the audio from us right now, and it did cut out a little bit about what we were just saying there, Chris. talking about the weather and saying it's sort of low-hanging clouds, but it's not as bad as it looks from the camera, right? Let's go ahead and just talk about that again real quick, because it looks like for some reason our communications channel was dropping offline.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah. So if you were just joining us, or if you are just joining us, the weather looks abysmal and looks absolutely terrible here, but it's not. Despite the low clouds and bouts of fog that we've had rolling in here, that's not a constraint for the Falcon 9. It can launch and it can land in overcast, foggy conditions just fine, because its systems know where it is, it knows where the ground is, so it's not an impediment to liftoff. And in fact, when the auto abort kicked them out at a minute 52 seconds or minute 53 seconds here earlier today, it was misting here where I was with all of my equipment, but they were still going to launch. So this weather is not a constraint for the Falcon 9 right now. Even though I can't see the tops of the lightning protection towers at pad 39D and can barely see the top of the vehicle assembly building.
Gotcha. And again, we're still standing by to see what the deal is, but it didn't look like it was a weather issue there. So, Thomas, could you grab a couple questions real quick while I continue to look at this this audio thing? It looks like we're good for now.
Yep, sure thing. Question here about, do geostationary sets not have such a critical window? Generally speaking, it depends on exactly the mission. Geostationary missions usually have a launch window. The times where you have a instantaneous launch window are generally speaking things to rendezvous with something. So if you're going to the International Space Station, those missions have an instantaneous window. And if you're targeting a very specific orbital plane, such as a Starling launch or something like that, that's when you have those really narrow launch windows. But if you're going to a sort of generic low Earth orbit, or if you're going to geostationary, you usually have at least a small window where you can kind of move your T0 around and accommodate for weather and things like that, such as this mission where you have this 3-hour launch window. More questions?
It is important to note though that this is not a geostationary transfer or geostationary mission. This is a low Earth orbit flight that, based on all of the notice to airmen, airspace closure notices, and notice to mariners for sea closures, is headed to a 50-degree inclination orbit. So just a little bit lower inclination than the International Space Station, which is at 51.6 degrees inclination, and a little bit lower than the 53-degree inclination they've been using for the Starlink missions. But if you're watching from Jetty Park, if you're watching from Florida, the northeasterly trajectory is going to look almost identical to Starlink and ISS, even though it's a little bit different per the technical specs.
Yes. And Chris, you've got a message for you in our back channel, if you can check that, please.
Will do.
But I'm going to continue on with the questions. Let's see here. Oh, good question here. What is the dark discoloration towards the top of stage 1? It looks like soot. So you can see sort of the grayish areas where it is scorched from re-entry. However, the darkest point at the very top is actually the carbon fiber inner stage, which is pure black when it first comes out of the factory before it's ever flown before. So that darkest part is actually the inner stage. It's not painted white on the outside. It's that rare, sort of bare carbon fiber, and that is the part of the first stage which encompasses where the second stage engine sits. And then when the stages separate, the second stage engine bell just kind of comes out of that area. So that is the darkest part of at the top of stage 1 that you're seeing there. More questions here. Here is a good one, Lee. A question regarding space junk. How are launch windows planned to avoid collisions with existing orbiting objects? That is a great question. It's something that is done for all all orbital launches. It's called, you might hear a COLA window, COLA, which is a collision on orbit launch assessment or something like that. I apologize if I got the acronym wrong, but that COLA window is something calculated for all these different missions, which do avoid the mission flying too close to big objects in low Earth orbit. Lots of times you'll hear there's a collision avoidance consideration for the International Space Station, as it's such a large satellite in low Earth orbit. That usually comes up a lot. Sometimes for other things like the Hubble Space Telescope, occasionally things like that. It could happen for any mission in low Earth orbit, but Yeah, that is something that they take into account for all of these missions, making sure that during the flight it won't intersect with anything that's already in orbit. And that's just a matter of comparing the launch trajectory to the cataloged items that are flying over the launch site at a given time. But yes, that is 100% considered during launch preparations.
Yeah, one of the things I loved, it was just a humorous thing that occurred. The final flight to Hubble, actually, the last of the shuttle missions that never went to the International Space Station. Actually, if they hadn't have launched at the opening of the window, there were days in the Hubble launch schedule where they had colas and cutouts to avoid the International Space Station.
Right.
Which was kind of funny, considering that was the only one that wasn't going to the space
Right,
station, but
yeah.
they had to avoid it. Yeah.
Shuttle is usually trying to go to the ISS, and then the one time they're not trying to, it can't not go to the ISS. Yeah. But, so there's the answer to your question. Das, I've got a question for you if you've got a minute to answer it.
Yeah, what's up?
We've got a question here. Any update on your camera setup? Are you going to make some changes after filming Starship SN8?
Aha, yes. Amazon and the shipping companies are our friends as as things are whizzing all over the place, moving around so that we can make some improvements on those cameras for the coverage. That is definitely something that we're working on, y'all. So based on y'all's support, your absolutely insane generosity, we are able to always keep improving. We're working on audio stuff. One of the big projects I'm working on is getting a live microphone from that close-in camera so we can get live audio, and the trick with that is something that'll last for hours and hours and hours when you cannot touch it, and also be weatherproofed, which is not usually a thing for mics. So if anybody has any weatherproof microphone options, like, link them over to me because I'm interested. That's something that we're working on. And then also some more cameras, some better control, some better stable signal, all sorts of improvements being made out there. So no specific updates beyond that, but Bin Chicken, just make sure you understand that we are definitely going to make every stream better than the last. Thank you for asking, and thanks for the support.
There we go. And some more questions here. Oh, here is a good one that I actually am surprised we have not talked about this. Asking, was there a static fire for this mission? And there actually wasn't. This first stage was not static fired ahead of this launch. Of course, it flew to space and back 4 times and conducted static fires ahead of some of those missions, but this mission did not conduct a static fire on the first stage right prior to flight. SpaceX has kind of been avoiding that on boosters that have flown several times. They have basically the idea behind that being they have enough data where they don't need to static fire before every single launch. Brand new boosters, they are still doing static fires. Boosters that are near, that are fleet leaders, life leaders that have flown more than the rest of the fleet, they're still doing static fires on those. But if they're in the middle there where this booster, for example, has flown 4 times already, that's enough data for space to say we don't need another static fire test, we can just go straight into the launch flow. So that's a great question. No static fire prior to this flight.
And there have only been, I know this because Tyler and Colin put it in the launch article for us. This will join only 4 other missions that have not had static fires prior to liftoffs. So still very rare not to do a static fire.
Yes. It's a very new thing where they've started to reduce the number of static fires. So it's only been a few. This is the 4th mission they've done that for. But that will continue going forward, where some missions will not require a static fire.
And this is
and
actually
that just helps.
Go ahead, Thomas. Sorry.
I was just saying that just helps reduce the time between all of these flights and helps improve SpaceX's launch cadence. But go ahead.
Exactly. And apologies, I'll say it again for those of you who have joined us. I'm not purposefully interrupting Thomas. There's like a 1 second difference, so I think he stopped talking. And but anyway, it's this is important though for not doing a static fire, because this is a really big customer they're not doing a static fire for. And the majority of the previous ones, if not all of the previous ones, again, I'm blanking on that, but either a majority or most of them that they haven't done static fires on before were in-house Starlink missions.
Mm-hmm.
So this is fairly big, not do a static fire for an NRO flight.
It is. Of course, it is also noteworthy as this is the first mission for the Department of Defense using a flight-proven booster as well. So there's a correlation there.
Exactly. But it should also be pointed out too that static fires are sort of routine for SpaceX, but they're not routine in the industry. SpaceX is my knowledge, the only one that hauls all but 4 or 5 now missions out to the pad and static fires them ahead of time. Nobody else does that. A lot of other companies do wet dress rehearsals where you fuel the rocket and you take it all the way down to engine ignition, but don't actually light the engines. So it's not that SpaceX is skipping something that's industry standard. They're just opting not to do an extra thing that's part of their process because they have the data to support that they're fine.
Yes. Continuing on with the questions, Dave Wolf, just with some kind words actually. I'm so thankful for Chris getting up at early o'clock, traveling to and setting up the cameras for the NSG stream. Meanwhile, Das, Michael, and Thomas are in their bunny slippers.
Hey,
I'm in sweatpants and a hoodie. That's close enough.
I put on pants. Jeez, come on.
There you go.
Chris's commute is Daytona down to the Cape. My commute is pants. So.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, my commute for the Indian launch was also pants.
Yeah, so there you go.
Yes.
Hey, we're just trying to be safe from COVID, okay? I gotta stay home.
Yes, exactly.
In my pajamas.
And another question here, how long have NASASpaceflight been doing these streams for? Only been watching for the last month or two. This YouTube channel is only like a year old, right?
Just barely over a year. We started in the last quarter of 2019 with live streaming. Now we as an organization and a site have been around since 2005. May 2005 is when we started, but in terms of live streaming, we've only been going for a little over a year. In terms of launches, I know Mary has been doing the videos from Boca Chica slightly longer than we've been publishing them on YouTube. We used to publish them on our site and then very quickly moved everything to YouTube because that was a whole, that's money. That's a lot of money to host that much video.
Yeah.
Content. So yeah, we switched over to YouTube for that. We've done the live streams. Das has been absolutely instrumental in getting that off the ground, as well as Michael from the from the planning, the technical, and the programming elements of this. Major thanks to all of that goes to Das and Michael.
I mean, I just switched the camera really quickly to say thank you. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. You're welcome. That's a lot of fun.
Das, a related question here in chat. How is GatorCam coming along?
The first rule about GatorCam is we don't talk about GatorCam. So, geez, you can't just say on the live webcast that you're planning on putting a camera in a remote control alligator and driving it up to the launch pad. Come on, jeez. 10,000 people watching, really?
Is that an alligator with a GoPro strapped to it? Pay no attention to it. Just
hey, if it's got a GoPro strapped to it, it's not mine. I wouldn't deploy a GoPro. So. Anyways, what do I look like?
Unless it was a decoy alligator, right, Don?
Decoy alligator. That's the one you let them find, so they think they found it, right? Oh, here it is. Jeez, that was obvious. They painted the nose orange.
Anyway, hello, SpaceX comms who's listening to this.
We're not actually putting any cameras on alligators, we promise.
Yeah, we're not. That's it.
More questions here. Actually, some super chat questions. Here's one about the difference between T- and L-. This is an interesting discussion and is actually different because the last time we talked about this, we were talking about a ULA launch where T- and L- are different, but in SpaceX's world, T- and L- are actually the same thing, and here's the difference. So sometimes you have a T- clock, which is kind of where all the events in the countdown are synchronized to. And then you have L-, which is actually the time until liftoff. And they're not necessarily the same thing because in some countdowns, especially in United Launch Alliance countdowns for Atlas V and Delta IV, there are built-in hold points in the countdown where the T- clock stops and allows the team to work through any issues that have come up or just do some extra tests and checking on things before they proceed further into the countdown, before they resume the countdown. SpaceX does not have any built-in holds in their countdown. Everything proceeds in sequence, and they do not hold any unless there's an unplanned hold that comes up like they did today. So the T- and L- in SpaceX's case is always the same versus a potential ULA launch or some other launch providers where they have built-in holds where the T- and L- don't sync up until the end of the countdown, the last couple minutes when they have passed their final built-in hold. So that is the difference between T- and L-. Good question. A couple of new memberships have come here. Ted with the new membership. Thank you so much for the support. We appreciate it. And $5 Australian from Kylie Williams for DAS's Whizzing Around Cameras Fund. DAS, more money for the camera fund.
Thank you, Kylie. We appreciate that. I always say that people giving us financial support that way is a show of trust. And I guarantee you we are doing a lot of work to get you some really cool ways to experience these events. So thank you so much for the support and for saying that it's specifically for the camera fund. Like, has to go to the camera fund. Sorry.
DAS likes those.
It's true. It's true.
Here is a good question. This actually came up relatively recently. Dog Cruz asking, will Amazon's Kuiper constellation launch on Falcon 9? So Amazon is planning a satellite internet constellation. One of many constellations that are being planned. You have SpaceX's Starling. You have the OneWeb constellation. Amazon has this Kuiper constellation planned. Not launched yet, but in planning. And they have said that while they would hope that Blue Origin will offer some launch capability for that. Obviously, Amazon and Blue Origin have some commonality there, Jeff Bezos being the founder of both. However, they are open to launching on other launch providers, and they plan to do that. Whether they plan to launch on SpaceX specifically, where SpaceX is pretty much a direct competitor to Blue Origin, versus maybe launching with United Launch Alliance, which has some commonality with Blue Origin, or maybe some other international partners, I think that would make more sense than launching on Falcon 9. But they haven't ruled that out, and it would be possible. And I believe Elon Musk has even said that other satellite internet constellations, should they want to launch on SpaceX will not have any problem supporting those launches, even because I think Elon kind of has the point of view where the more constellations, the better as far as getting that internet access available. No worries, even though it will technically be competing with SpaceX. So it is possible. I think it would be more likely that they also launch between, Blue Origin and United Launch Alliance, things like that. Maybe Arianespace could be involved. But it's certainly possible that they could also launch with SpaceX.
Yeah, and it's interesting to note of these constellations, right? Like Starlink and Kuiper, and even Telesat from Canada. Although I'm not entirely sure where that one is right now, because we haven't heard a lot about it recently in terms of the large constellations. But we know that SpaceX, that Starlink and Kuiper, right, are for commercial use, right? But OneWeb is the tricky one, and OneWeb is actually launching tomorrow morning from the Vostochny Cosmodrome in eastern Russia on their 4th flight, and the first since they emerged from bankruptcy. And prior to when they went into bankruptcy, OneWeb was supposed to be a commercially offered constellation, just like Starlink and Kuiper. But when the UK government bought them in a 50-50 stake between the UK government and Bharti, an Indian-based company that does work for the British government and has holdings in the UK, when they bought OneWeb earlier this year, the announcement was really, really weird because it kind of alluded to the fact that it's no longer going to be commercial, but it might be because the government doesn't really know what they want to use it for yet. But anyone who doesn't agree with the UK government on things is going to be banned from using it. So no one really knows what OneWeb is going to be used for, just that they're not in bankruptcy and they're still launching as of tomorrow. So that's definitely the weirder of the three that we know of right now. That's sort of like nebulous, and we're just kind of waiting to see what comes of it. And then, of course, there's the Canadian constellation that had been talked about, but we haven't heard a lot about it recently.
Good deal. Some more questions that have come through here. Here's a good one, and I actually pulled up some reference materials to answer it. Cygnus asking, I believe only 6 boosters are currently available. Is SpaceX in the process of manufacturing more boosters? So the current status of the SpaceX fleet, if you will, not to be confused with the boat fleet. I guess I should have called it something different. The Falcon 9 booster fleet. There is booster 1049, which recently launched the Starlink V1L15 mission. That is being prepared for its next flight. That booster has flown 7 times already, so that is preparing for its 8th flight. That is one of the fleet leaders as far as flights go. The other one being booster 1051, which just recently launched the Sirius XM7 satellite. And in fact, that booster is on its way back to Port Canaveral and should arrive in Port Canaveral later today, which you, of course, will be able to see via NSF Fleet Cam. But those are 2 boosters. There's also the 2 Falcon Heavy side boosters, booster 1052 and 1053. They're the status of those boosters are not really well known because they haven't been working to convert them to Falcon 9s, which we know was an idea at some point, but it seems like that really hasn't come to fruition because they're kind of just sitting around. Who knows if they will actually ever fly again. After that, we've got booster 1058, which has flown 4 missions. Booster 1059 is the one you are looking at, ready for its 5th flight for the NROL-108. And then there's also booster 1060, which has flown 3 times, and 4th flight will be Turksat 5A, the next one coming up. And then we have booster 1061, the Crew 1 booster, preparing for Crew 2. Booster 1062, which recently launched GPS-3 SVO4. That booster is already allocated for the next GPS-3 satellite as well. And then we have booster 1063, which just launched Sentinel-6A from Vandenberg. So in total, there are 8 Falcon 9 boosters available and in the active fleet. After that, boosters 1064 and onward, we have seen them starting to go through McGregor. Those are the boosters for the next Falcon Heavy mission, USSF-44, launching next year. So the next 3 boosters will be Falcon Heavy components, and then after that they could go back and produce more Falcon 9 boosters. But right now, since they're in the middle of producing boosters for that next Falcon Heavy flight, no new Falcon 9 boosters are really slated to enter the fleet in the near future. They're just sticking with the 8 Falcon 9 boosters that are in the active fleet, 3 of which, one of which is at Vandenberg, and 2 of which are already allocated towards Crew 2 and the next GPS mission. So those boosters aren't really available for a lot of commercial missions or Starling missions and things like that, because they already have their next flight lined up. So really only like 5 boosters readily available for missions like that.
Just a quick update, the launch countdown must be resumed within the next 11 minutes if they're going to launch today. So that's the current situation that we're looking at. The launch window closes at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, which is in 56 minutes from now, and it is a 45-minute T-minus point that they're holding at. So it will take 45 minutes from whenever they resume the countdown to launch. So that's why they have just a couple of minutes left before they have to make a decision.
They did recycle the count to T-minus 45 minutes, and we are 55 minutes from the end of the window at this point, so keeping an eye on that. Continue to answer questions. Again, stick with us because we will know soon whether or not they are going to make another launch attempt today. If they don't, do they have a backup window tomorrow? Chris, do you know when the next backup opportunity is?
Yeah, according to the weather forecast, we have tomorrow, which holds an 80% chance of acceptable weather. And of course, today is a 70% chance of acceptable weather. Clouds can be deceiving. The weather's actually fine today to launch the Falcon 9. But yeah, tomorrow is slightly better, and slightly better recovery. And then recovery ops for the booster. Recovery ops for both the boosters, RTLS, return to launch site landing, and grabbing the payload fairings is a little bit better, but still classed as moderate for tomorrow, which is the same as it was classed for today in terms of risk of postponing the mission.
Actually, today, I'm looking at the weather forecast on screen right now. Today, booster recovery was classified as a low risk, so it's actually a higher risk tomorrow.
There we go. That changed since the last time I looked at the forecast. Good. So yeah, you can see better launch weather tomorrow, but maybe a risk of the booster recovery, which is weird, right? Because your launch weather gets better, but then your landing weather gets worse, but the booster is coming back to the launch site. Right. And that just has to deal with the winds that the vehicle can accommodate when it's fully fueled and going uphill versus the winds that can be accommodated when it's trying to do that pinpoint, here I come, I've only got one shot at this.
landing to LZ1, landing zone 1.
Exactly. Really quick, a message here from Old School Inside. Just want to say thank you while Chad is calm. Thank you so much for the kind words. And we are all anxiously waiting to see what exactly will happen with this launch. Das, a super chat question here for you, actually. Das, maybe check out the GRAS Acoustics outdoor mics. Any knowledge on that?
I'm already looking at them. I saw it in the queue and I looked it up. I think one of the tricks is looking for broadcast quality audio, and then things that are like sound level or monitoring audio, like security audio, are two different things. So that's what I'm definitely looking into that. Thank you for linking up.
Okay, we have an
that,
update.
The LD on
Let's
Canada
scrub
net,
has
we
been
are
called.
going to stand down on a recycle attempt today. Launch control, you're good to abort recycle launch at this time.
So just
We will be
heard
setting up
over
for
the
24
that was the
recycle.
SpaceX net, and that was an official scrub.
So that likely means they'll at first aim for tomorrow, but they might. We'll see what they say. But the attempt is tomorrow, and if they don't feel comfortable going tomorrow, even though the weather forecast only goes out that far, they can push farther into December if they need to. But yes, that is a scrub for today. Yeah.
That is the official scrub. So y'all, again, that is an official scrub. We just heard over the SpaceX countdown net, the official mission control audio, that they are standing down the launch attempt for NROL-108 today. They were looking at that second stage issue, the sensor showing high levels of pressure in the LOX tank, and Elon getting some tweets in there as well. We were standing by to see what was going to happen, and now we know that they are not going to be attempting this launch today. Of course, stand by. We will be waiting for SpaceX to tell us, are they going officially for tomorrow? Is it a larger issue with that second stage that they're going to need some more time to look at? But we will have to stand by for SpaceX to tell us what's going on there. Wow. Yeah. Now you know.
So
Now we know, but better. What is it that Tori Bruno always says? You would rather be on the ground wishing you were in the air than in the air wishing you were on the ground.
Yeah, that's it. So this is what happens. You know, you're chasing rockets. We're here live for just over 2 hours, 3 hours, however long hours it was. And Chris has rolled all the way down to the Cape. The cameras are ready, that sort of stuff. And then you get a scrub, and that's just the way that it goes. They don't launch the rockets for our entertainment. They launch the rockets to put the satellites into their orbits. So that is what we are always looking for, and we do not... We can't be sad about it. We want to see the rocket launched, but we want to see the rocket launched successfully.
yeah.
So...
Well, and I also want clearer skies for that return to launch site landing.
Yeah.
Joss, you want to take a look at Fleet Cam quickly? We got some action.
Is that a quest on the way out?
Yes. So what's happening right now on Fleet Cam is that GoQuest, which is the drone ship support vessel, is heading out because a drone ship is coming back to port with a Falcon 9 booster here shortly. So Quest is heading out right now with the crews that will be heading on to the drone ship to prepare Falcon 9 B-1058 for the port entry. Falcon 9 is returning from the 8 from the X for the port entry. Falcon 9 mission is returning from the 8 from the X for the port entry. Falcon 9 mission is returning from the 8 from the X for the port entry. Falcon 9 mission is returning from the 8.
Do you know what just happened, Michael? Sorry, folks. There was some audioception. The SpaceX stream ended, and you want to know what the stream it started auto-playing was?
Oh, no.
Ours. So when the SpaceX stream ended, it automatically started sending people to this stream. And so I was playing the SpaceX mission control audio back into our headsets here, and all of a sudden SpaceX mission control audio became our audio, and so you started hearing Michael. I'm like, wait, what's happening? It took me a couple loops to figure out what was just happening there. But
I heard the echo, and I just tried to keep going like nothing was happening because I figured it might have been on my end.
Right.
like a browser source had opened or something. So I just tried to roll with it, but it's hard to talk when you're hearing yourself on a loop back.
So before I do anything more with my camera here at the press site, I want to show you all something.
Okay.
So remember how I said that crawler transporter with the former shuttle launch pad was moving? And this was the view we started at, and it was right there where those 4 telephone poles are, right? And it's not there
Right.
anymore.
Oh, it's
because
gone.
while we've been waiting for Falcon 9, it has been driving. And it is now right here, about to head
Oh,
on
wow.
over. Yeah, and it is about to head on over to the vehicle assembly building, which you can see right there. So it's been dutifully making its little way down the crawlerway all this time, doing its test. And I just thought that's a cool thing to show, that progress was made on the crawler.
Yeah, guys, if you don't know, or folks, if you don't know what we're looking at on Chris's camera there, that was the NASA crawler. That's the crawler that actually carried the Apollo rockets out to the launch pads and then the space shuttle out to the launch pads. And they are testing it. It looks like it has an awful lot of concrete and steel stacked on top. Some of those big pieces you see on top are not normally there. And I think what they're doing is testing out the load on it to make sure that it's going to be up to snuff for the plans they have for the future. So
Indeed.
that is what's happening on Chris's camera.
And now I'll go back to the Falcon
9. And yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was talking about it. I saw you started to point back over. But that's been happening the entire time here, over there on the crawlerway right next to Chris. And then, like Michael was saying, on Fleet Cam on the left-hand side, it looks like we were watching Go Quest. There's Go Quest, just passing the pergola. It is going out to support that booster return. Do we know, Michael, how far away that booster is from port right now?
I think it's still quite a bit out, so it's probably... I'll have to check again. I haven't checked in the last 30 minutes, but I would guess it's probably an hour or 2 away at least.
Still an hour or 2 away. So not the type of situation where we might leave this broadcast live to wait for the booster come back in. But if you're interested in seeing that booster come back in, you can hang out on Fleet Cam, the other stream that we've been running 24/7. I'll get the link for Fleet Cam here so y'all can hop over that way. I do believe that's going to start coming to the end of our live coverage here, right, y'all?
For NROL, yes.
Yes, I believe we'll wrap this up and come back tomorrow. So hope to see you guys back here tomorrow for another launch attempt, assuming that SpaceX does remedy their stage 2 issue in time. But we will be live again tomorrow morning, hopefully.
All right. And I am going to put that link to Fleet Cam into chat. Fleet Cam has been live since October 19th. It's 24/7 views of primarily the SpaceX operations at Port Canaveral. You can see the fairing catchers, the capsule recovery ships, the boosters coming into port, the drone ships, all the operations there as they fold up the landing legs and move the boosters over to the port and then lay it down and drive it away on the transporter. All that is live 24/7 over on the NASA Spaceflight Fleet Cam, which is what you're getting that live view from Port Canaveral of Go Quest there on the left-hand side. Of course, Fleet Cam's over there at Rusty's Seafood and Oyster Bar. We've worked with them. They gave us a spot. They gave us some electricity, and they've gave us the permission to put Fleet Cam over there so that we can bring you this sorts of coverage with what's going on at the port. But expecting later today a return to port of that booster that just launched that Sirius satellite radio SXM7 the other day. And we will have Fleet Cam live for that, so you can see the booster come back in and all the processing that occurs in Port Canaveral is the right way to say that. Also, if you head over to Fleet Cam, maybe give it an upvote. It's at 3.9 thousand upvotes right now. I'd like to get it to 4,000 if nobody's been over to Fleet Cam before. But, just a little project of ours there as we watch what's going on at the port.
Right? Can never hurt, right, Doss?
Yeah, it can't hurt, But Chris, you're probably getting to the point where you're going to need to pack that camera up.
When we're ready. I mean, when we have 3-hour windows, I plan to be here for the whole 3 hours.
For the whole 3 hours. Gotcha.
You have to, yeah.
All right, Thomas, Michael, concur.
Yeah.
Wrap up the commentary stream here.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, folks, speed run these super chats. Enzia Razi is a membership. There you go, Enzia. John Fannerstill, thank you for being a member. Jack, it just says Jack is a new membership. Charlie Linser, a new membership as well. Theosove Games joining the club too. Thank you all so much for the support. And then the super chats I'll run through the end at the very end of the stream here. Dan, I think people will be suspicious of an alligator swimming around in salt water. Maybe a croc cam instead. But crocodiles aren't indigenous to... Anyways.
Yes, they are. Yes, they
Wait.
are. Yes, they are.
Crocodiles?
Florida is the only place in the world where alligators and crocodiles coexist naturally in the world. Yep.
Really?
Yep. The American alligator is in South Florida and has made its way up to Brevard County. I think they've been seen naturally. But yes, we do have crocodiles naturally in Florida. Yes.
I'll be darned. I thought that was not the case. They must have been like released like the anacondas or something like that, right?
Nope. Naturally.
No?
Naturally coexisting.
Really?
Yep.
All right. Well, there we go. I've learned something today. Apparently.
The helicopter and fleet cam, sorry.
Oh, the
One of the
helicopter.
range helicopters flew over.
Oh, we just saw it fly by 39A, actually. So there you go. You can work out the timing.
In any event, Dan, thank you so much for the support. I'm just trying to empty these. I'm not getting a ton of the big questions or anything like that. Chris von Scheinitz, thank you so much for the $9.99. Says, where do I go to become a member? There should be a join button right below the video, and if you click join, that's where you can join as a member. It's like a monthly fee. There's a couple of different levels. You get different things based on what level you join, but that should be that join button right there below the video if you're watching on browser. Jirwa says, last super chat, great job, see you tomorrow. Jirwa, thank you so much for the continued support. Moldy Space Industries as well. Audio went 10 by 10 for a moment. Yeah, it did, Moldy. Ken Tono says, shout out to the boys of COT. Let's get this rocket up in the air tomorrow, maybe. Tomorrow is the time that we'll do that, hopefully. We'll continue to wait for SpaceX to give us official word on that, but appreciate the support there, Ken. And then Babinski UT saying, has the NRO ever scheduled a payload for one type of launch, had an on-pad scrub, then changed the payload to another type of launch vehicle? That's almost like NRO saying, this rocket ain't launching our payload, we're moving to a different rocket. I think with everything that's involved, that's not a thing that would normally happen.
Not once they've gotten to a launch attempt, no.
Right.
Because at that point, you built the satellite specifically to go on a specific vehicle. At that point, but they can change before they get to that. Oh, it's doing it. The water truck. Yes.
Oh, the water truck.
Yes. So why do we care about a water truck? This is oddly one of the health and safety requirements when you move the crawler transporters. They pulverize the Tennessee River rock underneath them, so they have to spray down the rocks to minimize the dust that can get kicked up and that people then inhale, because as the crawler moves down the crawlerway, there are people watching it and walking with it and monitoring everything as it goes. So they spray down the crawlerway, just like you're seeing now.
Yeah, there you go. Chris, thank you for turning that way so we could catch that. You can't really see it from this angle, but the crawlerway that the big, massive tank tread crawler goes on is actually two sort of paths of this really big gravel. It's Tennessee River rocks, like Chris said, and the gravel is there specifically to help distribute and absorb the force of that crawler moving across the ground. And as it crawls, it's literally crushing the river rocks into little teeny tiny pieces and powder, like cracking them, crushing them. And because of that powder, you can actually get a situation where a bunch of dust blows them, people inhale it, yada, 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 right? So the spray truck that Chris was talking about is trying to minimize the amount of dust that comes from those Tennessee River rocks getting crushed by the massive tank treads of the crawler. Oh, see, now I want to wait until we can see the full tank tread out behind that electrical equipment, because it's really cool.
I know, right? It really is. Like, if you ever take the tour of Kennedy, or if you ever have the chance to be standing on the crawlerway, I mean, you really do get a sense. I mean, when you're just standing in the mark of one of those treads that has crushed the rocks, and there are whole rocks all around you and half rocks all around you, but it is just, the sense of scale and mass of that is really put into perspective if you ever see the tracks that it leaves on the crawlerway behind it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And look at the scale. You can see, Chris, just like you said, there's some spotters walking there at the base of the crawler to give you a sense of scale of how big that thing is. That is, it carries moon rockets. Y'all carried past tense moon rockets. Hope maybe in the future it'll carry moon rockets again. But that is a big piece of equipment. Massive diesel electric generators on board, just like a train. If I remember correctly, I think it's got, I think it's 4 of the big massive generators that run it. It may be more than that, but it's actually electric motors that crawl it forwards with these big generators generating the electricity for it. Same principle that a locomotive would use. Gosh, I don't remember if it was.
And it's something like its gas mileage is like a few it's like a couple it's like what, like 100 feet or so per gallon or 200 feet per gallon. It's ridiculously fuel inefficient.
I don't know
yeah.
off the top of my head. I know it's not miles per gallon. I know it's gallons per mile. So
yes, it's definitely feet per mile if you're doing it that way.
Well, feet per mile is 5280 usually.
Right, but you said miles
gallons
per
per
hour,
feet.
so I said feet,
gallons
right?
per feet. Sorry.
Okay. So, I mean, I got that right, didn't I?
You said feet per mile.
Oh, I meant feet per gallon. Sorry.
Feet per gallon. Gallon per feet. Yeah. Look, y'all. It uses a lot of fuel to move down the track. Let's put it that way. Look at this. Look at the orange vest there. The person in the orange vest and the hard hat, the spotter. Look at the scale of the tread to the person. Oh, we can zoom in. God, look at that. It's like a moving building.
It really is. I mean, and it has a jacking and leveling system too. So when it climbs the 5% grade ramp at 39A and 30, well, it doesn't climb 39A anymore, but when it used to, and when it still climbs 39B, it keeps that entire platform perfectly level as it climbs. It's an incredible feat of engineering.
You got to think of it, because if it has a rocket stacked on top, remember the Saturn V moon rockets were stacked on top of this thing. You can't have the rocket lean backwards when you crawl up a little hill, right? And the launch pad is actually elevated, so when it goes up the launch pad, it's got these massive hydraulic jacks that make the treads actually become, what's the right way to say this? It moves the treads so that the surface, the top, actually stays perfectly level, while the treads may be on uneven terrain. It's just it's
incredible,
cool piece of equipment. Now you know where the Jawa sand crawler comes from. Pretty soon they're going to stop and they're going to have some droids come out the side and try to sell you a couple droids, Chris.
Well, thankfully they're not the droids I'm looking for.
They're not the droids you're looking for. I mean, when you zoomed in, you could really see. I think this is like max speed right now. It's really hauling.
It's close to max speed, and it's actually turning right now.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's actually turning. It's taking one of the forks in the crawler away. You can see it because it's the back end is turning toward us right now. So yeah.
Again, y'all, this has nothing to do with SpaceX. This is just like some bonus content. You know the NASA spaceflight team. You know how excited we get about all sorts of different cool stuff, and these NASA crawlers are serious pieces of engineering. It's just really cool to see this thing in action. So
sadly, they can never race them down the crawlerway because it's one way.
It's one track. You can put like 2 houses. I think you can put more than 2 houses on that thing.
Oh yeah, that way you are looking at. I mean, it's configured because it was used for the shuttle program, but that is the base of the launch pad that launched the Saturn V moon rockets.
Wow.
We just took the tower off of them and redid the flame holes and upgraded some technology, but and for the shuttle program. But that is the Apollo from the 60s that launched men to the moon.
Hey Chris. Yeah. Could you zoom in on that rear tread real quick? I want to see if I can point out a personal DOS experience here. I mean, I've been on a NASA social where they let us go over to the crawler. They were doing tests on the crawler, and we stood right next to this thing as it was crawling. But do you see that there's 2 holes, front and back, right? Do you see the main sort of wheels in the front and back that the treads are sort of pulling around? And you see those 2 service ports just behind the sort of main spindle or axle or whatever. So I've stuck a live stream camera inside of that service port to look at the inside of the greaseway where they were having to slop the grease. I've actually taken my little handheld live stream camera, and on a NASA social, I put my hand inside of that port and looked down with the camera. I'm lucky I didn't drop it. I did it. I'm not sure I should have done it. Maybe I shouldn't be admitting that this is something that I did, but I'm serious about live streaming things, folks. You'll see the little ports I'm talking about, right? I think no one is going to comment on this.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was. Oh, I didn't realize I had muted myself. No, I was saying you're exactly right. I mean, the crawlers are incredibly cool. When they bring us out to see them, like I always want to go because they're incredible. But yeah, you're exactly right. This is also the breakneck maximum velocity.
Are those rainbirds on the top, Chris? Are those like the water suppression system?
Yep. They're the sound suppression system for the top of the pad. Yep.
Yeah, the water suppression system. Nice. The sound suppression system. God.
Yep. And you can see the T0, the tail service masts, are the two things toward the left-hand side of your screen that would provide the data, electrical, and hydrogen, oxygen fueling connections on either side of the shuttle orbiter.
Good grief. That's just, I mean, y'all, this is bonus again. This has nothing to do with the SpaceX thing. NROL-108 scrubbed due to an issue with the second stage of the rocket. A potential issue. It was a sensor reading, and it was a sensor reading that was significant enough that they wanted to make sure everything was good. We were ending our commentary when we saw the crawler over there and wanted to share that with you. But I do think, Chris, we should probably get to the point where we're cutting you loose. There's that Falcon 9 still over there on the pad. No, I don't know. Did we get official word from SpaceX or not yet?
Oh, that it's scrubbed? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. On the recycle, like, are they going for tomorrow?
They said they're going to try no earlier than tomorrow. The window opens at 9 a.m. again.
Okay. Good deal.
So I'll see y'all tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Sounds good. Chris, thank you so much for rolling out there again. Y'all, that's the voice of Chris Gebhardt out there at the Cape, assistant managing editor, videographer, live stream host extraordinaire for NASA Spaceflight. Chris, thank you again for rolling out to get us that cool footage and the footage of the crawler. That's really cool.
Yeah, the crawler was bonus. I mean, when I pulled in today, I was like, oh, they got both of them out. Like, both of the former shuttle pads are just making runs up and down the crawlerway this week, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
But anyway, my absolute pleasure. And tomorrow we'll have a very similar setup to what we had today, where there's a launch before this one. Tomorrow morning we have OneWeb at 7:26 a.m. Eastern, launching from the Vostochny Cosmodrome in the Russian Far East, which is an Arianespace mission using a Russian rocket from a Russian launch site. So Russia and Europe both get the credit for the launch. And it's launching a UK communication satellite, or series of satellites. So that is first at 7:26 Eastern, 12:26 UTC, and then Falcon 9 will follow no earlier than 9 a.m. Eastern, 1400 UTC.
Alrighty, so we'll be covering that for sure. Hey, also back in the studio today, we had Thomas Berghardt. Thomas, thank you so much for the time. I think we've already done this, but it's okay.
No, all good. Thanks for joining us, everybody, and hope you'll be back tomorrow for yet another launch attempt.
Good deal. Michael Baylor as well. Michael, you ready to shut this down? I guess not.
Sorry, I will go back to bed, is what I was about to say.
Good for you. Over there on the West Coast, Michael Baylor, thanks for rolling out so early to help.
And hey, major shout out, you probably can't hear him, but Stephen Marr, our photographer, was here, and he's going to the port to get the booster. So you'll see his photos later on. See you later, Stephen. Safe drive. But yeah, he'll be back out here with me again tomorrow too. But he was out here all set up before we took refuge in our cars.
All right. Well, y'all follow him on Twitter there at SpaceCoast_STVE. Stephen Marr just saying that he is headed to Port Canaveral because he is going to try to catch that booster that's on the way back in. We still think it's an hour or two away coming into the port, but he's headed that way to try and catch it. And if you want to hang out in the meantime, Fleet Cam's going to be live. There's that link to Fleet Cam one more time. You can head over there and see that booster coming back into port from our robotic camera at Port Canaveral. But for now, for the NROL-108 launch coverage, I'm John Galloway with NASA Spaceflight here. We are going to be signing off. Thank you, everyone, for supporting us and showing up to watch the stream with us and share this with us today. And we will see you nerds later. Head on over to Fleet Cam and keep on hanging out. Thanks a lot.
Pressure looks good.
Following up. Roger, roll, Atlantic.
need any more of these.